And hello again. Welcome to Reading the Receipts, where we are going to do our weekly recap, going over all of the Blake Lively, Justin Baldoni legal documents, and kind of seeing what the latest is. We've got a lot to do this week, so keep in mind this is probably going to be a 2 hour one tonight. So make sure you've got a good drink, a comfy spot, and we're going to get through it. So lots of water breaks. If you stick around for the second hour, I will probably throw out some free memberships to the channel again. So there's incentive to kind of stay awake and get through this. I will do my best to try and make it entertaining. Sylvain says, hello, I made it to a live. Yes, you said that you were going to be able to make it, and here you are. So I appreciate you joining us tonight. All right, like I said, a lot to go through. So buckle up. There's a lot. So we're first going to start with, because this one's kind of easy. Leslie Sloan had filed a motion to stay discovery until the motion to dismiss was decided. Wayfarer came back with their arguments against. It was very much similar to the New York Times, but in this instance, and I think this happened today. Oh no, it's the 15th, I guess. I guess that was the thing he was citing. It was, yeah, it was today, May 21st. Lyman came back and said, no, we are denying staying discovery. Interesting because Sloan had said that like Wayfarer had asked for 370 requests for production of documents and 18 interrogatories, which is a lot, especially if it's going to get dismissed. So I wonder if him saying discovery is denied is an indication that it's not going to get totally dismissed, or that decision on dismissal is so far out because we got to wait for everybody to do their responses and stuff that he doesn't want to slow things down. Don't know where his head's at, but that was the first thing that happened. I got half an hour and I'm waiting in my therapist's waiting room, but I'll be here as long as I can. Well, yes, hope you have a fantastic session, but I appreciate you being here with us, and we'll hopefully be able to recap after your session is finished. So hope it's a good session. All right, so the next thing that happened this week is Jed Wallace filed for a motion to dismiss as well. And most of like the legal reaction I've seen to this has been that this is like pretty well written. That this is a good motion to dismiss, and he has a high likelihood of being dismissed from the case. There is some kind of I don't know what to say. Some like I don't know, some stuff going on. I don't know enough to know whether this is normal. And I definitely would love like to see what more lawyers kind of say about this. But when we get to Jed Wallace, he basically has said, we get to where it's going through, that he was only really watching. That he, first off, doesn't want the venue to be in New York. He wants it to be in Texas, and we'll get into that in a second. But that he really didn't do any of this stuff. That he was really just watching. He never published directly or indirectly any information concerning the plaintiff, and his assignment was to monitor and analyze the media and its communications in that regard with residents of California. So he's just basically saying, I didn't do any of that other stuff. I was only watching. The other piece in here is him arguing that he wants the venue to be Texas. He probably does that because the law is going to be more favorable to him. But like I said, there's been some trickery in all of this. The first is that he's denying that Friedman is his counsel and that his legal representation are the folks that are on here, which I don't remember what their name is. Oh gosh. But yeah, he's well, I guess their name will be right at the bottom. Yeah. Bear with me 1 second. Because he includes like 2 copies of the CRD in here, so it is difficult to find. Yeah, they're not here. This is all her other stuff. He includes so much in this. There we go. Nope, that's still CRD from Lively. I know, normally I'm better prepared than this. That's his complaint. There we go, Babcock. He's arguing that Babcock's his lawyer, not Friedman. Which is interesting because when you go back to, I think, Baldoni's original complaint, where is this? In New York, where he filed against the New York Times, Friedman was representing Jed Wallace when he filed in California against the New York Times. Now that got dropped, everything got consolidated. Now in the consolidated cases, again, Lively originally also included Jed Wallace as one of the complainants in her original CRD. I just bring that up for a second. Just bring the CRD up. Jed Wallace was named. He was not named in Blake Lively's amended complaint. He was not named in Baldoni's 179-page complaint or Baldoni's amended complaint. He gets dropped off. But anyway, he's asking to be dismissed from the complaints that he's not on, and I'm arguing for Texas, but he's also pointing out that, hey, at the same time, I sued Lively in Texas, I think it was like February 5th, that's my lawyers. And so he's been kind of doing this messing around a little bit. Where was it? In Lively's amended. So one of the things he did originally was he messed them around when it came to being serviced in the first place. It's not this piece. There it is, 101. So originally when, is this right? No, this is Baldoni's. Wrong one. Womp womp. 101. Okay. So originally, when she tried to service Wallace, they were obstructing him. Firstly, his counsel, Friedman's office had said, we will accept service of Wallace. Don't try to serve him. Then when they did try to do it, they said, actually, we've never agreed to service Wallace. So after trying to dodge being served, they were then trying to personally serve Lively, and even though they'd agreed to waiver of service to, like, let's go, they tried to do it with personal service. It included a fraudulent attempt to gain access to Lively's property by falsely representing the process server as a delivery service. So there's already been some messing around with Wallace in just trying to get him served in part of these complaints. So I don't know, like, with this him now saying, well, you know, my lawyer on the Texas case is my lawyer and you shouldn't have served Freeman, and I don't know why you're representing that, why Freeman's saying that he is representing me. Because I think it is understandable that he could have a different lawyer for the Texas case that he filed versus defending him in the New York case, because obviously I think, you know, lawyers have, you know, different jurisdictions, are able to appear before different bars and stuff. So it would make sense. So I don't know why there's this apparent confusion. I don't know if it's intentional on Wallace as kind of like to drag things out. I don't know if it's just a mistake by Lively's team and they just assumed Friedman was his representative just because of the original complaint. But anyway, so it's interesting because, you know, he's basically saying, I'm not involved in any of this. I didn't do any work for them in New York. Nothing, you know, about my jurisdiction is New York. I'm all in Texas, and I only did work in Texas. One of the things I thought was interesting is in the suit that he's filing against Lively, he's arguing for damages of like $1 million. And part of it is he's arguing it based on emotional harm. Now he's saying that all of this comes about because she originally filed in her CID against him, naming him and saying that him was involved, and that was defamatory and caused damages to his reputation and a loss of business that exceeds $1 million. But while he's saying that, he's also saying that there's nothing in what he was doing that Lively's trying to file and get damages for intentional emotional distress, and he's like, no, that's not even a recognized tort. You can't go for that. So I don't know if that's just a Texas, New York thing, but I did find that amusing that he's on the one hand telling Lively that she can uh, go away with emotional distress, but that's exactly what he's claiming is caused to him by by the articles being published about him. Um, so yeah, so mostly he's saying, you know, I was not really involved in anything doing this. I didn't do any smear campaign. And she said that you know, he's saying that in order for him to be aiding and abetting retaliation against sexual harassment according to California law, that he would have had to have knowledge that what they were doing was violating employment law, and he didn't have that knowledge. And she never has any concrete allegations of how he knew that what he was doing was aiding them breaking employment law. I don't know if that's particularly compelling. Again, like he said, he says that he's not involved in, you know, he was never involved in this astroturfing campaign or smear campaign. But he also includes, like I said, a ton of exhibits in here, and part of it is his sworn declaration. This has been going around the internet since this got filed. I think this was yesterday. Oh no, Thursday. And they're saying, well, you know, Jed Wallace declared, made a declaration under oath that he was not involved, so he couldn't be involved, and he can't lie. He's not supposed to, but perjury is a thing. So I don't necessarily wouldn't put a lot of faith into he says in here he didn't do it, so therefore, Your Honor, he didn't do it. So he goes through and just kind of says, you know, where he's from, where he works, all of the rest of the stuff. So he's saying here, my earliest involvement is in a limited role was August, which lines up with what we know, right? Melissa Nathan, they reached out to her July 24th, 26th, got her original proposal. August 2nd is when they come up with the scenario plan. And then August 7th is when they enact the social media combat plan. They discuss the pricing for the social media combat plan. And then very early on August the 8th, like UTC time, they reach out to Jed to say, hey, can you guys get him up to speed? Now he's saying that was just me monitoring and observing. I never did anything. So he carries on his declaration. I never posted anything on social media. I didn't ask anyone else to post anything on social media. I've never published directly and indirectly any information regarding Blake Lively. And he does not have a digital army in Los Angeles, in New York, or anywhere else. He has not eaten green eggs and ham on a train, on a plane. He doesn't have a direct team in Hawaii, which is something they referred to, and all the rest of the stuff. And says, I did not specialize in executing confidential and untraceable campaigns. Interestingly, we'll get into why, so hold on to this piece of information for more towards the end of this recap for the week. He says that in early August, he was contacted by Nathan about Justin Baldoni and potential stories of social medias, and his job was to read, analyze, and assess all forms of media and trends, right? So he's saying that he's just basically doing sentiment analysis on social media. He never did anything proactive. What's not in here is a declaration of who hired him. He continually talks about, like, he was contacted by Nathan. His feedback was directed to Nathan. He said that his comment, "We are crushing it" on Reddit, was just the him observing an organic overpouring of support for Justin Baldoni. My feeling at the time was that no actions needed to be taken, and everyone should let the sentiment on social media organically unfold, right? So he didn't do anything, guys. What's interesting, he says no actions needed to be taken at that time. I would be interested in knowing what actions would you have taken or pushed forward. You know, he's saying he doesn't do any of this stuff, but he's also saying, oh, we didn't do anything. Then what would have been those actions? He carries on to say, my advice was not to do anything and just let sentiment on social media unfold organically, and that his work related to Baldoni ended in November. And then again, that he provided feedback to Nathan, who he understood to be in California. He does not mention the phone call with Jamie Heath. He does not mention that he talked to Jamie Heath or is in contact with Jamie Heath. Yet we know that Melissa Nathan talked about that he had briefed Jamie Heath on what exactly his team were doing. So interesting that that has been left out of his declaration. I'm sure that will get picked apart. Again, he reaffirms my role on social media was entirely passive observation and analysis of social media as it pertains with us. Yeah. So he also says that, pleads poverty, that, he couldn't do this case because travel to New York would be difficult for him. And so this is another reason why this needs to be filed in Texas. So I don't know if he is going to end up get kicked out, and then Lively's case against him will just be settled in Texas, and they will just have to fight there. We shall see. Convenient that a plan was made and shockingly no intervention. The plan just happened. Don't you love when that happens? Oh, just wait. Just wait till later. One of the other things that happened after we get through the motions to defense is Baldoni did not file one. The deadline was the 20th. It was just today. At the last minute, they did not file a motion to dismiss. Instead, all of the Wayfarer defendants filed their answers. It's going to take me a while to get through them, but we're going to talk about some of the preliminary stuff that I've looked at already. The long and short of it is, Obi-Wan Kenobi, they accept everything, the social media plan, the wording of it. Again, they reiterate everything they've said. Yes, we did plan. All of these documents are correct. The wording is correct. We did say that we were going to destroy her and plan to bury her, but we didn't do anything. Again, we'll see how that holds out. But yeah. So I think it's interesting that he's saying, that he didn't do anything, and, he's trying to say, hey, look, I was just doing social, passive social media stuff. Because, we have their text messages where, we talked about before when we first went over the original series, I think from that very first episode when we talked about the smear campaign and when they hired the crisis PR, that they talked here about where is it here? We need to enact the social combat media plan into action. So why? This was August 7th. Can you call Jamie and get the green light? They did. Lively's amended complaint 73, right? These are the emails where they say, okay, does this fee cover what we discussed in terms of social media mitigation and proactive fan posting to counter the narrative? Or is that in addition to the 15K? Does it not include what we discussed with Melissa Nathan earlier regarding social manipulation from the separate team based in Hawaii? And then, right after, I think about 4 or 5 hours later, they're talking to Jed Wallace saying, hey, Tag, is this something you can bring them up to speed on so they can hit the ground running? And then, obviously they have the other text message from them. Was it the 9th or the 10th, I think, where they're already seeing the feedback from Jed Wallace's team. I believe it's the 10th. We'll just scroll through Baldoni's timeline here. Right here. Where they talk about extremely limited pickup on the Daily Mail or Page 6 articles, which again, we've already discussed. We've seen a large shift on social due largely to Jed and his team's efforts to shift the narrative towards shining a spotlight on Blake and Ryan. So it's fine that he says, I wasn't doing anything like this. I was not doing anything proactive. I wasn't, I was just monitoring. The issue he's going to have is you can say that Blake Lively's wrong for having that understanding of what you do, right? It becomes very difficult to say, hang on, the people paying your bills thought you were doing this. They're very clearly talking about your efforts as an intentional and deliberate effort to shift social media sentiment by putting the narrative towards shining a spotlight on Blake and Ryan. So if the people who are paying you also believe this, that's where it becomes more difficult. It's very easy to say, oh, Blake Lively doesn't have any evidence. She doesn't know what she's talking about. She's misinterpreting or making these guesses or making these false allegations against me. The team that were paying you thought you were doing this. So there's definitely questions that get raised by it. But we'll see. We'll see what happens with his motion to dismiss. So Jed Wallace got paid and did nothing. No, he did something. It looks like he's trying to claim he was being paid $15,000 a month to basically read Reddit for them. So I don't know. Stringer Bell says, hello. Hey, chat. Welcome in. Good to see ya. Wait, don't they specifically talk about Luke being Jed in one of the early crises? So he saw a crisis and said, looks good, and then paid handsome player. Yes. I mean, this is what they're trying to say. We've got the text messages, and as we get to the answers, they admit all of the text messages are legit and accurate as well. So this is going to be interesting how they thread this particular needle. All right, so that was Jed Wallace's motion to dismiss. The next is this Blake Ryan's? Ryan Reynolds. Ryan Reynolds filed his motion to dismiss, and it was good. So we fully expected that they would file separately just because there's so little against Ryan in the Wayfarer case that it makes it very easy for them to kind of get him dismissed. There's a lot more in Lively's. Hers is going to be a little, we thought, a little more complicated, but we'll see, right? All right, so getting into the introduction, right? This is where I think I noticed in this week that so far all we'd really seen like are Lively's complaints, which weren't very snarky. We've seen a lot of snark from Wayfarer. This felt like the snark was being unleashed back. So yeah, in Ryan's introduction, he kind of points out that, hey, what does all of this have to do, legally speaking, with Ryan other than him being a supportive spouse? Nothing. So he's trying to say, look, none of this relates to me. He says he's in here for one reason, and that's because Sarowitz had promised to go after Lively and Reynolds. He's saying that Sarowitz and his co-plaintiffs the complaint they filed seeks to fulfill that promise by polluting the court's docket with hundreds of paragraphs of clickbait designed for an audience other than this court, with virtually no bearing on cognizable legal claims. So they're saying that, look, it's just fluff. They're not actually writing anything with any intent to go to court with this stuff because it's all completely bogus. I thought it was amusing that he said here, the Wayfarer parties have described their first amended complaint. You'll see this all over. This is their first amended complaint. They're kind of poking fun at the fact that they've already requested leave to amend their complaint. So they're arguing it's like, well, this is their first amended complaint. It should be their only amended complaint. But as I've said, I think Lyman's going to give them the option to amend it after the motions to dismiss have reached their conclusion. It says, as their most recent attempt, again, shade all day, to put all of the evidence before the court in public, that is a damning concession given the lack of any actual evidence. And this is something we talked about. They keep saying that there is this extortion claim or that there's defamation. They just can't tell you where the defamation claims are, who they were said to, what they actually were specifically. They just say they did them, in their motion to their defense against the motion to their objection to the motion to dismiss from Sloan. They talked about, well, we think we have there's more evidence and more allegations against Sloan. We just don't have any evidence because she was so secretive. So we need discovery in order to get the evidence to find out what exactly she did, which that's not the way you do it at all. It is insane. So yeah, so they're pointing out that like they're not able to show any evidence of extortion, which Blake Lively's motion to dismiss will get into. The Wayfarer's party's so-called receipts, again, they're very much playing this to the internet audience, included annotated excerpts, many with heavy redactions made by some unidentified person, of emails, text message, videos, such as large colored photographs comparing Mr. Reynolds' long hairstyle in a movie with Baldoni's long hairstyle at some point in his real life. But they said the FAC is a pleading, not a gossip rag, and these receipts fail to establish the requisite elements of a single one of their causes of action. All right. In part, they kind of say the defamation won't work because Baldoni's a public figure. In defamation, you need to prove that, what they said was false. They knew it was false. They said it intentionally with malice to cause harm, and that it resulted in some form of damage that you can show. Again, they talk about the plaintiffs collectively, again pointing to the group pleading issue that we've talked about before, without a claim for defamation, without pleading a single complete statement or identifying the time and place of such a statement, nor can they because no such statement exists. The entirety of the plaintiff's defamation claim appears to be based on 2 times that Reynolds allegedly called Mr. Baldoni a predator, but the FAC alleges no plausible facts that suggest that Reynolds do not believe his comment to be true. Instead, the FAC allegation suggests that Ryan's, perhaps genuinely, perhaps passionately, believes that Baldoni's behavior is reflective of a predator. This is wild. He's basically saying, come at me. He's like, you want to say this is defamation? No, no, no. I need you to understand, I genuinely think your behavior is that of a predator. Even if the FAC plausibly alleges that Reynolds called him a predator, so saying even if they can show it, while he didn't believe it to be true, that calling somebody a predator is protected opinion. The FAC's thin-skinned outrage over a movie character, the satirical woke nice pool, doesn't even pretend to be tied to any legal claims. Instead, it falls into the FAC's general allegation of hurt feelings, which, again, they're using Wayfarer's own words against them, pointing to where it says this in the FAC. You can see here 329, where they talk about, you know, it caused all of this stuff and then hurt feelings. And again, Ryan Reynolds, even if Nice Pool was based on Baldoni, they have to show that there was some sort of damage to it or whatever. They can't just say, hey, he's mocking me. And again, I think, you know, we've talked before about the large problem of people didn't really know that movie was out for a while, that it was meant to be Baldoni, until Baldoni kind of self-identified that, hey, this is me. So that also hurts your claim as well. A lot of people have said, oh, this is him admitting that Nice Pool is based on Baldoni. It's not. When you come to a motion to dismiss, you have to do so basing the fact that all of the allegations in the complaint are true, right? You have to show that even if what they're saying is true, there's no legal grounds, there's no case because of all these other reasons, right? So like with this, they're saying, look, even if Nice Pool was based on Baldoni, right, what he's doing is he's just upset he got mocked and it's hurt feelings. He can't show any actual damage or intents to cause malice and all the rest of it. So again, they're saying that this is nothing more than a desperate effort to advance the same curated bully image that the Wayfarer parties created and disseminated in the retaliation campaign they launched against Lively. So yeah, he's not actually admitting Nice Pool is him. He's just walking that line of, I'm not saying it is, I'm not saying it isn't. We're just, if we pretend and assume what they're saying is true, it still fails because of these other reasons. They then go into basically using his words against him. They're talking about, they're asserting $400 million in damages without saying in what proportion, who got those claims. Like there's all of these Wayfarer defendants, which one, how much, what exactly, they don't say. They just pull a number out their butt, basically, is what he's saying. He says the FAC is in essence a burn book filled with grievances attempting to shame Reynolds for being the kind of man who is confident enough to listen to the woman in his life and to hold her anguish and actually stand with her, which is pulling quotes from Baldoni's TED Talk, the famous TED Talk he did that got like 8 million views that launched his platform, I think, back in 2017. So again, they're using his words against him. So they're talking about that this is a retaliatory suit and so it should be dismissed with prejudice. And at the end, they argue that Ryan Reynolds should have his attorney's fees paid. Chat's gone quiet. We good? You can still see me in chat. Thumbs up. Because when it goes quiet, it makes me think that it's gone dead. So chat, give me a thumbs up. You can see me and still with me, chat. All right. Let me see. We're good. Next best. So we carry on. So page 12. So they get into the heart of the defamation allegations. Thank you. And they point out that basically it all stems around two statements that they talk about. Basically that Ryan also used to describe Baldoni as a predator when he called Baldoni's agent, and that Baldoni apparently approached Baldoni's agent, an executive at the WME, and expressed his deep disdain for Baldoni, suggesting the agency was working with a sexual predator at the premiere of Deadpool and Wolverine. But they point out that there's not really a lot of specificity to it. We don't know what exactly. was said when. They go on to basically, carry on and say, look, there are basically the whole allegations against Reynolds are that they asked for a public apology, that he was present when, Lively demoed the rooftop scene and praised her version of that scene, that he contributed some of his own writing to the script. And he puts in here, allegedly. This is when Blake Lively had, like, on the red carpet said that, hey, her husband had contributed some of it. So even here, he's like not admitting that he did. And I don't know if they were looking for a defense of that Lively had just said that for marketing, or whether he did end up actually ever writing. They ask about, talk about, they are also saying about him admonishing Baldoni during Lively's wait. And then, that he was there for that January 4th meeting, and that he unfollowed Baldoni on social media, and that the nice pool was meant to satirize Baldoni's persona as a woke feminist. All right, so they get into the actual arguments. He basically says he would prefer New York in that argument, although the Wayfarer parties agree with Lively that California law appears. But he's basically saying it doesn't really matter here. Either way, it fails by both definitions, by California law and New York law. So we get into the specificity that we talked about. What's interesting, he's got a kind of new defense, right? We've seen this from Sloan and from the New York Times, where they both say, hey, there's just not enough specificity into the defamation claims to really credit this going forward and why it should be dismissed. Reynolds goes a little further and basically says, look, you don't give me any details of when. So much so that I don't know how to defend myself. If you can't tell me when this is, or when it was, who it was to, what exactly the words were, how am I supposed to be able to raise a credible defense or know what you're talking about if I don't know the circumstances of the event? And that's kind of going a little further than anybody else has argued before. So as he says here, the agent statement, the FAC does not plead what he said, when he said it, any of the context during which he uttered the statement. That Reynolds used the term sexual predator to describe Baldoni during a phone call. The absence of these details makes it impossible, for example, to determine whether this statement falls within the applicable one-year statute of limitations, which is a new thing that's been brought up. I don't think anybody else had brought this up before, which to me, I was like, does this mean that he does know when this was, and that he does know that it's outside of that one-year statute of limitations, is a kind of wink and a nod, or are they just bringing that up as an argument? Because it seems relatively easy for Wayfarer to come back and say, well, we know when it is, it's then, and it is inside the statute of limitations. So I thought he might be bringing that up because he knows that it's outside, and he's just kind of letting them know that your claim's going to fail. Anyway, the other claim is for the conversation with the executive. He says it provides only slightly more detail, namely that Reynolds and an executive had a conversation where Reynolds had deep disdain for Baldoni, suggesting the agency was working with a predator. The FAC does not allege what precise term Reynolds used in this alleged suggestion, the sentence in which he suggested it, or any information of the context of the conversations. So again, he's basically saying, we don't know what you're talking about, and you don't have enough specificity to it for it to be able to stand. He goes on to say that the predator statement is quite clearly an expression of opinion. People in X were saying this was snarky and aggressive, self-fulfilling that. It's all in that introduction. I mean, the introduction where he calls it a burn book, he uses his words against him, all of it is in the introduction. There's not a huge amount of it once we get into the actual arguments. But that introduction's pretty good. He then says, look, we know from other court cases that, like, calling people scum or crooks or criminals and predators, they're turns of phrase. They're meant to be opinion. And so it's protected because it's not meant to be an actual fact. But then he goes on to say, they themselves actually agree with this, because when they talk about the conversation with the WME executive, they talked about how he was expressing his deep disdain for Baldoni, because that is very clearly reflective of a negative opinion of Baldoni's character. He's not stating facts. He's venting his frustrations and his upset, and that Reynolds, any man who, like Reynolds, believes his wife was sexually harassed would hold somebody in deep disdain. So this is just opinion. And that anyone interpreted Reynolds' statements as reflecting anything other than his genuinely held belief about Baldoni's character. So again, they're kind of pushing that it just doesn't go far enough. But then he kind of turns around and basically says, all right, but even if it's not opinion, even if you're going to argue that this is a statement of fact, it is fact. Again, they pull out the FAC, and then in the FAC, in his complaint, I got to go pull this up, page 60. Where's Baldoni's complaint? Did I get it up? Yeah, this is Baldoni's 60. So in Baldoni's complaint, they talk about, Lively talking about feeling uncomfortable around like Baldoni's porn addiction. And they talk about, look, he writes it openly in his book. He talks about all of this stuff. Anyone who knows or has done research on Baldoni would have knowledge of his books, of the things he said in his podcasts. So it's unfair to treat Baldoni as this, as making women uncomfortable, because like this is part of his persona and what he talks about and what he does. So Reynolds uses that against him and says, well, they claim that anybody who has knowledge of Baldoni would have knowledge of the content of his books. Well, his books are full of numerous admissions to behavior that could be reasonably described as predatory. That, he admits to crossing boundaries in his teens and his 20s, of not taking no for an answer, I think in a couple of his quotes. And they just provide a ton of quotes from his interviews, from his book. He talks about how no one ever sits down and teaches us about consent. We learn it through pornography. That that he's had to, he's done a lot of things like microaggressions for racism, sexism, whatever it is. I've done them. That I wanted it as a man to claim her publicly. On some level, it made me feel like a man. And so Reynolds is basically arguing, look, he's already admitted to this stuff publicly. He spent years of his life mistreating women, which he attributes to his addiction. He describes his distorted conception of consent. Were this to go to trial, it would be Baldoni's burden to prove the factual falsity of the supposed allegation he's a predator. But the law offers no principled basis for a jury to distinguish that label from Baldoni's own descriptions of his behavior. So they're kind of using his words against him, saying, look, you have made this platform by basically saying that you are a reformed predator. So how is it that it's unfair to do it? It says they kind of go down here and say, it's perverse to permit Baldoni to build an entire brand complete with podcasts, TED Talks, and books off his confessions of repeatedly mistreating women, only to turn around and sue Reynolds for $400 million for simply pointing out in private what Baldoni has bragged about in public. When we talk about like the snarkiness there, Stringer Bell, there's some of it, right? Is they're coming back to like he just said, he admits to crossing boundaries. He's admitted to it multiple times. How is it unfair then for Ryan to then basically call him out for it? It's it's hard. It's pretty good. All right. Let's kind of go through it, kind of distinguish bottom. So we go into damages. Nobody else had really caught this. Now, one of the things to note is in these motions to dismiss, I think they're limited at 35 or 36 pages. So there's only a specific amount of room. So because there's so little against Ryan, he can kind of consolidate and do that. And he's got a bunch of space left over. So he basically makes an argument that will apply to everybody in their motions to dismiss, that we hadn't seen before, and I guess because there just wasn't the space. But this is the idea that, look, Baldoni's whole claim for damages is bogus. They've pulled this 400 million number out, but they can't specify what amount was suffered by Baldoni versus any of the other parties that was specifically caused by Ryan's statements, as opposed to, say, Leslie Sloan's statements or what happened with the New York. Like, how can you claim this is valid when they don't have any idea? That they don't have any specificity. They also can't prove or haven't shown anything demonstrating actual malice towards them and trying to inflict that. Again, there is not a single plausible factual allegation from which a jury could conclude that Reynolds does not believe Baldoni to be a predator. To the contrary, the FAC alleges that Reynolds took steps consistent with believing the allegations, including demanding an apology for Baldoni. And this is where it starts to like unravel, right? Because Baldoni did repeatedly offer apologies for his behavior, as well as an admission that he was going to change his behavior. That, even mocking his woke feminist facade in Wolverine, if that happened and that was what he was doing, would be another example of him believing the allegations from his wife and believing that Baldoni is a predator. Not to mention Baldoni's own public admissions about his past conduct. The deep disdain that the FSA alleges Reynolds feels towards Baldoni concedes that Reynolds subjectively believes what he says. That there's no malice, he's genuine. like you said there, Obi-Wan Kenobi, like he flat out believes it. He's not being mean, he's not trying to cause harm. He genuinely does not like Baldoni. They're going to say, look, the Predator statement would only refer to Baldoni as well and not for the other Wayfarer parties. This is again kind of coming into that group pleading issue and how they haven't really separated any of that out. The next part kind of deals with, they claim that because Reynolds talked to WME or made these claims that, then Baldoni was dropped by his agency, and so they're entitled to damages, or that broke, WME broke their contract. Now, he comes in here to basically say, first off, they haven't shown any example of what was broken with their contract. They haven't shown like what the details of the contract are, what the actual breach, the damages that were from the breach, any of it. They've shown, they're claiming this, but they haven't given you any basis on the contract that was supposedly broken. It goes in to say that strikingly though, throughout the FIC, there's not a single allegation that WME breached his contract with Wayfarer. He's not suing his agency. So how can he be suing Ryan for getting the agency to break their contract if he's not also suing the agency for breaking its contract? He also goes on to point that basically they just ceased to carry on with his contract. They just terminated it. They didn't breach it, they terminated it. But terminating it is not the same thing as breaking the contract. And the Wayfarer parties, who have alleged the existence of this contract and are presumably in full possession of its full terms, have failed after multiple tries, hundreds of pages, more media interviews than can be counted, and a publicly launched website to identify any actual contractual provision that they claim WME breached when it terminated his contract. And this, I think, is really why Ryan's kind of motion to dismiss really hits back. It gets to the core idea that a lot of the rage and upset and anger that Wayfarer are throwing out with the suit is really just hurt feelings. It sucks, right? It's not nice. Somebody's running around calling you a predator. It's not necessarily anything that is, legal liability. Him telling an agency, hey, you have a predator on your books, and then terminating his contract doesn't by itself mean that they have breached the contract. They have to show and demonstrate why that is, and they haven't. And it kind of feels a lot like this is like a Twitter lawsuit almost, when somebody's like, I'm gonna sue you for like absolutely nothing. That's what they're kind of highlighting and showing, is that this lawsuit doesn't have actually any basis in law. At will means they can terminate for any reason. Yup. Except Stephanie Jones's husband is associate at WME, which incidentally is something that did get brought up this week, which we'll get to right at the very end. But I don't know how much that impacts any of this. They were still working with Stephanie Jones when all of this happened. Was it like early August? So, at that point they were all on board together. So I don't know. Okay, so where are we at? We're at page 30. So yeah, again, coming into 30, acting out of malice. They didn't do anything wrong or illegal. 34. The other thing is they kind of come back to this idea that, they haven't really shown any evidence. He kind of called this out at the beginning, but he calls it out again here, saying that, the Wayfarer parties confine each of their allegations of conspiracy to information and belief. So this is the idea that they all came together and conspired, right? And that Reynolds was part of it. I think there was a bit in, I forget which of Baldoni's complaints it was. I think it's the 179 complaint. I'm not going to go jump into it. But there's a bit where they're talking about getting Jones's phone, getting Abel's phone and getting all the text messages. And they talk about how Blake Lively, Stephanie Jones, and Ryan Reynolds all conspired in a plan to get her phone and get her messages. And it's like, no, her employment was terminated and she had to hand over her work phone. There's no conspiracy to get her phone there. So he makes this point out that they're saying this is based off information and belief, which is, like, I don't have first-hand knowledge, I don't have evidence, so that, but I want to be protected from saying things that aren't true. And so he's just saying, yeah, they've got information and belief, but they don't have any evidence to sustain a conspiracy theory. They in particular don't show any evidence of them texting together, working together, coming up with a plan, all of the stuff that Blake Lively has shown from her very first CRD. And then finally, he argues that it should be dismissed and that he should get fees against it for filing a retaliatory suit. So we'll see. Phone and contents are property of the employer. Yeah. How that escaped Abel, I do not know. Everyone's saying poor Justin Baldoni, she ruined his career. He paid for the smear campaign. Yeah, and I think, Stringer, like I talked about this again today, this is really the big issue with all of this. Is like at any point they could have issued the public statement that they were asked to. They could have not done the smear campaign. Really what we showed in the earlier videos, especially the video about the crisis PR, that very first video, was what motivated them wasn't even anything Blake Lively did. It was they were worried about people speculating why he was separated at the premiere, which again was Wayfarer's plan. It was their plan to have them separate on the red carpet, separate to go to different screenings, because originally, if Baldoni went, the entire cast was going to boycott. They could have just not sent Baldoni and just said, hey, he's broke his leg, he's recovering from an injury, he's got COVID, 101 different excuses as to why Baldoni was not at the premiere. He wishes the cast well, hopes, thanks them for celebrating great. Could have done all these things, but his ego wouldn't let him do that. So instead, they came up with the plan of, right, he has to go to the premiere. If he does, the cast have already said they're going to boycott. So now we'll come up with this plan to where everybody's comfortable, where he's not seen with them or on the carpet at the same time. He did this himself and he hadn't harassed her. Yeah, I mean, and that's the other thing, is that the very first moment that somebody tells you they're uncomfortable, somebody with Baldoni's platform should have been, oh, let me listen to that, hear it, take on your feedback, and make adjustments to the behavior so you're protected. I mean, again, in his place, making a movie on this topic, intimacy coordinator should have been there on set, even for non-intimate scenes. Some sort of crisis counselor, therapist, social worker, somebody, because of the topic that you're dealing with, to make sure that everybody was just feeling emotionally safe, given that you're dealing with this really intense topic. Just doing all of those things, but I feel like they were trying to do this on the cheap. All right, so that's Ryan's motion to dismiss. Next up, Blake Lively also filed her motion to dismiss. It's even more stupid because if he would have gotten away, this is the other thing, he would have gotten away with the harassment if he hadn't done the retaliation campaign, and he would have got away with the retaliation campaign if Abel hadn't also tried to steal all of the confidential information, try to allegedly leave and form her own company and take the clients with her, breaching her non-compete, allegedly. Like, that's the only reason we have any of this, is because her employment was terminated and she handed over everything. That then all of a sudden they started to go through to find out, okay, she's trying to poach my clients, she's trying to steal my documents, what else has she been up to? Oh God. All right, Lively's motion to dismiss. All right. It's pretty powerful. So Lively's motion to dismiss essentially argues that her entire uh, her entire complaint, her sexual harassment allegations, all of it are protected disclosures. There is nothing that you can do about it. They are legally protected. And everything that Wayfarer allege, the defamation, the damages, the conspiracy with the New York Times, all of it all stem from her disclosing her sexual harassment allegations, which are protected under California employment law. Yeah, they did nail this. I don't think anybody I saw predicted this is what they would go for. I kind of, and I'm not trying to say like I knew, but like my grasp of retaliation when it comes to harassment allegations and stuff is pretty nails. Just as a people manager, you get trained on this stuff. You get to, you know, go through all of the training. You know that basically any employee talking about the moment they talk about like an unsafe work environment or a hostile work environment, like HR get real nervous, right? Because of all of this, right? Because then everything, whether they're working more hours, whether they get let go, whether they get a bad performance review, all of that can then be used as I'm being retaliated against because I've raised these complaints of hostile work environment or harassment. So like I kind of had a grasp of like, I don't see how all of this isn't protected. And again, this comes back to like the trial by Twitter, where essentially everybody's like, she tried to damage his career. She made allegations against him. Yeah, I got news for you. Like, they're allowed to. And you might feel so upset about that of like, oh, it's not fair. How can she just go out there and accuse a man? But there's a reason why we want to protect it. And we'll get into that. Well, Ryan unfollowed him. Yeah, I know. They unfollowed and blocked him and Wayfarer too. So they deserve everything that's coming to them, apparently, according to Wayfarer. Um, so in particular, though, they kind of talk about not only that, but they're also, and we'll get into it, but the laws that protect her from speaking out also have a provision that retaliation comes with not just paying her attorney's fees, but treble damages and punitive damages. So whatever damages she can show from their action, triple that, but also then a punitive damage on top of it to discourage them doing it again if and when their lawsuit is dismissed. So this now raises the stakes. It's not just a case of Baldoni's complaint getting dismissed and them being on defense, defending themselves against Lively's lawsuit. Now there's some serious money in the game. That them putting up their lawsuit now means if they lose or if it gets dismissed, there is a huge problem on their hands and they got to pay out. In an epic self-owned, the Wayfarer parties have created more liability for themselves by the malicious efforts to sue Lively into oblivion. Steve Sarowitz may indeed make good on his threat to spend $100 million litigating against Lively, but perhaps not in the way he planned. Gotta love that they actually included that in their suit. Yeah, I mean, I'm getting opened up to a whole new world. I always thought lawyers were very dry, humorless in their writing, not as people, but like in their legal writing. Because you don't want to upset the judge and stuff. We're seeing from these suits, from Friedman, obviously, his team really have a lot of fun with bombastic language. But in these introductions, from Ryan's and Blake's, you see that Gottlieb and then I think it's Hudson also have a lot of fun. I get that right? Yeah, Hudson. Ezra did a Ursa. Ezra. I don't know the pronunciation. I apologize. But they did a fantastic job. She did fantastic. This is so good. All right. So where were we at? Okay. So one of the big ones that comes up, and this has not been put up before, and this is so good. So again, Baldoni's allegations and his suit all stem from Lively speaking up about sexual harassment. So Lively makes the point that, well, technically, if we're going to go back to when she made the accusations of sexual harassment, that would be her 17-point protections that she issued on November 9th, which is over a year before they initiated this action, and therefore outside the 1-year statute of limitations. So if we're going off, hey, this is not the first time these allegations against you have been published, you actually knew about this back in November, then you're well outside your 1 year. Again, it kind of makes that point that they never really had an issue with this until she went public. All right, she goes on to talk about their whole issue is that there's this huge conspiracy theory that Blake Lively basically falsified her allegations. And she did so because she's so immensely powerful that her and her influential husband wielded so much power that people were unable to resist. Nobody would stand up to either of these two as they stole creative control over the film, right? That's basically the gist of Wayfarer's allegations, that Blake Lively, Ryan Reynolds, these two rich, powerful people that nobody could stop from taking this film from poor Wayfarer. But on the other hand, they claim that she was so powerless that the only way she could have any power was to manipulate and manufacture sexual harassment allegations a year in advance. So long before she ever starts taking control or getting, a producer credit, she then starts, February, May, as they're beginning the event shooting, putting this all in place because that was always her plan. And they make the point that these are contradictory and can't coexist. Either she was so weak she had to invent this, or she's so powerful she could have just taken the film. The other problem is the FAC repeatedly and consistently includes facts that demonstrate Lively's genuine good faith belief that she was mistreated and her appropriate and private effort to improve the situation for herself and others. And this is the huge point, and I pointed out with his timeline. I don't know why they put the timeline out. They could have done all of this without the timeline, because the timeline, as I went through the earlier parts, showed that in those first 3-4 weeks of production, there were 7 conversations about behavior and unsafe set. So if you're going to say that she made and manufactured these allegations, consistently saying, oh, she had another meeting and why she felt unsafe. She had another meeting where she felt unsafe. We apologize. Oh, Baldoni apologized for the 3rd time for the same, but so you knew, and her, she's not just coming up with this out of the blue. You know that this was genuinely a concern and something she kept bringing up and never ever addressed it. So it kind of defeats your idea that these are manufactured fake allegations. All right. What we at? Page 11. Okay, 12, additional compensation. So they go on to say their big thing is that they claim that there was this extortion, right? That Lively had threatened to reveal the sexual harassment claims if they didn't give in to her demands for creative control. Threats which are never specifically identified anywhere in the FAC because they never happened. Again, huge problem with Baldoni's complaint. Not a single one of these supposed threats ever shown. No text message, no email, nothing from Blake Lively saying, do this or I'm going to go to the papers and do all of this stuff. All of his texts encourage creative input. That makes no sense. Yes, we're going to get to that as well. Moreover, the FAC does not allege what money or property Lively received for extortion. She supposedly extorted her way into editing a movie for no additional pay. So they're pointing out here that the issue they have is her taking over creative control, but what they were getting out of it is her doing all of this editing, this production work, her giving more of herself, and she never got paid for any of the additional labor she put in. She could have quite happily just gone home. So what was she getting out of it? They go on to this a little further later on. The FAC's self-defeating claim appears to be that Lively bullied her way into doing more work than she was contractually obligated to do without additional compensation, while Wayfarer profited handsomely from the blockbuster movie's success. So, again, calling out the fact that our wonderful feminist, anti-patriarch educator, Justin Baldoni, was profiting handsomely from, once again, unpaid labor from women, which is another nice little knife dig. Notably, the Wayfarer parties didn't pursue any action against Lively for this extortion until after she filed legal claims, which speaks volumes about the lawsuit's purpose. And again, saying, hey, if you were so upset about this, if this was such a problem, why has this never been brought up beforehand? Oh God, it's me. Sarah says, lawyers can have the best sense of humor. I am learning this now. I am learning things. Bellman says, for the cast not wanting JB to be with them at the premiere, things must have been extremely difficult and uncomfortable. They know the importance of premieres, especially with the leading male actor. Yeah. And again, for it to be the whole, he doesn't deny it was the whole cast. He just says that Lively had promised them something. We don't know what she'd promised them or what she'd offered them, or does he show any evidence that that was indeed the case? He just makes that up and doesn't give us any evidence. Okay. So we'll go through into the actual arguments. Again, kind of saying that, look, his own complaint accepts that all of these things happened. They talk about, what's essentially the difference here is they're quibbling about the characterization of events. They don't say this didn't happen, that never happened. They claim those events did occur. And she lists out the events here, talking about Baldoni entering her trailer to talk about her wardrobe, that he became emotional, that a simulated nude scene was filmed without a coordinator present. We talked again about it, this is what, the May 23rd scene, I believe, where she simulated nudity in the bathroom, and there was no intimacy coordinator present. I'd kind of put that together from what was in the timeline, so it's nice to have them confirm that, yeah, that is indeed the case. And then during the press tour too, after editing and release to the interviewer, praising her contributions. Yep. Constantly. The other pieces here, showing the birth video, filming romantic scenes without rehearsing them, often with variations, having to improvise, and then being in her makeup trailer and asked to turn around. So, they admit to all of this, the events occurring, they just disagree on the characterization of them. So these are not false allegations, right? They're admitting that, oh yeah, these events happen. She just feels differently about them. And that's not enough. That is not enough. And again, especially with the harassment complaints, it does not matter how you feel or interpret or perceive the events. It matters how the employee feels. And if the employee feels unsafe and communicates that they're unsafe, they do not have to write a formal allegation. They do not have to go through the formal HR process. You have to deal with that complaint as it is when it's made. And failure to do so is a big deal. And again, know this just generally from employment. Like, they put you through this training for a reason. She goes on to say, look, she had communicated them, right? They refer to the November 9th email, which, I talked about when we covered it, that the email itself that her lawyers send to Wayfarer on the return to production, includes this text that, well, they send it to the film's legal counsel, right? Then they say, it's no surprise to the film's producers that experience of shooting the film has been deeply concerning. The complaints of our client and others have been repeatedly conveyed and well documented throughout pre-production. So they're showing that, yes, this was talked about. And even then, we talked about how all of this stuff has been documented. It did not come out of nowhere. There were all of these events, which you say happened. There was an email that said, hey, as per all of the events, which we all agree happened. And then she goes on to say that at the time she was willing to forego a formal HR process as long as the set was safe moving forward. And then, ended it and said they have to guarantee these protections or I might pursue my legal actions. Didn't she have 2 separate trailers? Yes. Yes, we covered that in one of the other videos as well, that I think part 5, that him saying, oh, I was given permission to enter a trailer. He was not. He was waiting for her in the hair and makeup trailer, knowing full well he was not supposed to be in her personal trailer while she was pumping. If it rose to the level of extortion, then they should have sued her. Yep, it would have been a slam dunk breach of contract. It's almost like it never happened and she didn't do that. We'll get to the breach of contract part in a little minute because they call that out too. Yeah, it's very well written. So they call out the legal letter, right? That you can't say that this is invented or came out of nowhere. There is a paper trail, right? And I've talked about this before, that there's a 6-month paper trail, 4 meetings, a letter from the legal team, assigned protections. Like this is a lot to kind of go for. All right, so let's get to California law applies. We're going through the rest of what happens, right? So we know that they talk about going after her and retaliating, and that she worked with the New York Times, and they got the complaint. Again, in the complaint though, through this, she never actually kind of admits that they leaked the CRD complaint to the New York Times. And they certainly don't say that they were working on it for like, months beforehand. So they kind of just dodge and say, well, even if. All right. So she argues that California law applies to all of the claims. So this is a great Uno reverse, right? They've been claiming that, oh, we want California law to apply, we want California to apply. And so, sure, Lively agrees that California law does apply, and then pulls out the fact that California law does protect her right to speak out and seek remedies for harassment and retaliation. It also provides protection from defamation-based suits like this one. So, yeah, this was bad idea. It's never good when the other side's like, yeah, do it. Let's go. All right. So again, we come back to defamation. And like everybody else has said, they can't actually specify what was defamation. They're essentially alleging that just her coming out about sexual harassment is defamatory. And we'll get to why that isn't the case in a little minute. But again, they argue that, hey, the FEC does not assert a single defamatory statement to Lively. And so what they're kind of making the point of is the claims of defamation aren't anything Lively actually said or published or did. It is solely the CRD complaint itself and the New York Times reporting on the CRD. And as such, because everything she said was inside the CRD and it's protected, then the defamation has to fail and be dismissed. We come into, well, I was going to say no defamatory gas. Yeah, again, she also makes the same defense here that Ryan made, right? That because you're not giving me any details on the specificity of what was said to who or when, that she can't identify any false allegation asserted by her that supports the defamation claim and can't defend against it. So if you can't give me enough specificity so I can know what it is, so I can make a defense, how is this even able to be actionable? So this is where we come back into the statute of limitations, right? So because the First Amendment complaint was issued on, I think, January 17th, right? It's got a year. So any of the statements have to have been made before January 17th, 2024. The problem is the 17-point protections was issued on November 9th, and they also had the January 4th all-hands meeting, which again, they agree about, where Lively read aloud a list of grievances, including those in the protections for return to production, as well as others. They believed they were fictional and had never happened or been grossly mischaracterized, but she made them, and they were done on January 4th, which is, 13 days outside the statute of limitations. Thus, the FAC confirms on its face that Lively published her harassment allegations to Wayfarer and others prior to the cutoff date. And in fact, they actually admit as much in their FAC because they point out and they claim that she'd used the grievances in the 17 points to seed the allegations in her CRD complaint. So even they draw the connection of the CRD complaint is connected to the 17-point protections. And they, call it out as the foundation for her bizarre claims of harassment. So whether they agree, right, whether they want to characterize them as being false and made up, they knew about them back then, and that was when they were first published. So then we come to the multiple privileges that protect it. Like I said, they're basically saying that everything that she said that's defamatory is from the CRD complaint. And so first is the fair report privilege, which is one we've seen before from the New York Times, right? That they are allowed to report on legal action that's happening, right? It's not defamation for them to basically say, Miss Lively is suing them for sexual harassment. That's not a defamatory statement. That is a true fact, and they are protected reporting on that by it. Now, Wayfarer argues that the New York Times went above and beyond just simply reporting on the CRD complaint by saying that, there was this smear machine, and we talked about that last time, and they're part of a smear campaign, and they're trying to say that those things weren't in the CRD complaint. They're whole new claims and allegations that the New York Times was making about Wayfarer. That isn't the case for Lively. Lively's not made public statements about it. She didn't publish anything. It's all in the CRD complaint. And so since she is protected, any third party who communicates privileged material to the press is protected by that fair report privilege. She can't be liable for defamation because it's all based off what is in the reporting of the CRD complaint itself. She also then argues that there's the litigation privilege, which this is basically saying that you can't be held for defamation in litigation for claims you make in litigation. So, you know, if Blake Lively was to file litigation saying, you know, something about me, whether it's true or not, if she's alleging it in a complaint or putting this legal action, there's a protection there that then you can't be sued for defamation. Now, it has limits. It's not universal. But in this particular case, it covers her because, you know, she's just making a good faith complaint, pursuing legal action. And so those allegations will have to be determined whether they're true or false through court. You can't then just sue them for defamation if they're turn out to be false or if they're made falsely, right? So, they talk about here that Wayfarer asserted that she never intended to file her CRD complaint, bringing that up, which they originally said. A prediction that is largely irrelevant and was disproven when Lively did that. So they point out that they got it wrong. And then they point out that California law protects her anyway, saying that, you know, even if the complaint was given to the New York Times first, and that she'd leaked it before she filed the CRD complaint. The Times only reported it after the complaint was filed and reported on it on the complaint itself. So all of this is protected. Imagine how many other victims of Justin they are. He's been doing this a long time. Well, we already know, right? He's been sued multiple times for hostile work environment and unethical behavior. You know, Travis Flores' family still does not have answers from him. He still refuses to talk to them. I will continue. I posted about that again today when somebody was like, Justin's a good man. I'm like, no, a good man doesn't leave a grieving family desperate for answers, leaving Facebook posts saying, please talk to us. Especially not a man who profited off exploiting their son. So I will keep banging that drum. Lost my train of thought there for a second. Okay, so it was published after, and then, you know, one of the things I talked about this on Threads, but I'll bring it up here as well because, you know, I really loved and I'm so grateful for this call out because they're talking about the California law that protects Lively from making this and this change that was made specifically because in the wake of the Me Too movement, it talks about they're unveiling a predatory culture that persists across all sectors of employment and society in which many victims have been served with defamation lawsuits. The legislator went on to describe these retaliatory suits as a weapon to threaten, silence, intimidate, and dissuade their accusers. And so the law that she's using here to cover herself with is one that was enacted in the wake of the fact that there was this huge pushback because of the Me Too movement. And I think it's ironic because everything we're seeing now, right? And I talked about this, I think, last week with a video. A lot of the creators who are pushing back, who are pro Baldoni, who are putting out all of this content, who are making money off this, right? And I say that with an asterisk, right? Because I'm making money off this too. Who are doing this for clicks and views are doing so because they, at their core, have this hatred of the Me Too movement and they want to tear it down and destroy it. And a lot of these creators, what do I name them? I won't name them, but a lot of these creators have publicly expressed disdain for anyone who supports Me Too, for the movement itself, calling it a hoax, have defended other predators. And so I would really appreciate them calling out this, that there is this layer that we have in society of people who are waiting to tear down all this progress and go after victims and make sure there isn't a place where they feel safe enough to be able to speak up. And recognizing that this protection comes at the cost of all those people who were silenced before and the legislature making that change to add in that protection is now what protects Lively. And in a way, she gets to now speak up and speak out on behalf of all victims because of victims before who were silenced and those who campaigned to get that law updated and changed. I just thought that was a beautiful moment. They did not need to put that in here. They did not need to call this out. Knowing that they did so specifically as kind of like a wink and a nod to that, I was just really grateful. And then they issued, like I think I talked again on Threads, a public statement afterwards talking about we wanted to make sure that people knew there was this law that protected other victims from speaking out, and you don't need to be afraid. And like, just class act. So again, just hats off to Hudson, Gottlieb, and the entire team for not just using this law to shield Lively, but for calling out how important it is and calling out that that protection exists for other people, at least in California. All right, I will move on from being a sentimental fool. But yes, talking about how it's protected, that, look, it protects individuals for speaking out about their experiences with harassment and related claims, and protects them from retaliation, whether in a legal proceeding to the press or otherwise. So essentially, it doesn't matter. Her talking about the harassment she faced is protected. Factual information related to an incident of sexual assault, harassment, or discrimination by the individual making the communication. So including harassment by a director or producer. So calling out that that law exists and essentially fully protects her, but doesn't just protect her, but protects her from retaliation and being sued for defamation in particular. To be protected by the privilege, the speaker only need to have a reasonable basis to file a complaint, harassment, or discrimination, whether that complaint was or not filed. So one of the big arguments that's come up a lot has been, well, where's the formal HR complaint? We've never seen a formal HR complaint. The law that she is using here doesn't have that level, right? So again, like if you see these kind of comments coming up, know that that's not the case. There does not need to be a formal complaint. There only needs to be a reasonable basis to file a complaint. And again, Lively had made her concerns and her issues around the unsafe environment repeatedly, and they recognized that she had made those concerns. In other words, the harassment privilege attaches regardless of whether the complaint was ever filed and no matter who the communication is published to. So it's very broad, very protective, entirely for all of the reasons we just talked about. The protections would apply to individuals who, after relaying any factual statement, whether in the form or formal complaint or statement outside of formal proceedings, such as to a media outlet, sued for defamation. Very broad, very clear. It will be interesting to see how they claim that this will not apply to her in their response to this motion to dismiss. The other thing she goes on to say as well is, there isn't actual malice, that she didn't doubt her what she was saying. Again, this is much like Ryan's motion to dismiss. She genuinely reported her sexual allegations based on the incident that they acknowledged take place. She genuinely believes her allegations. These admissions are fatal to it. I think they also call out later that, they actually accept that she genuinely believes it. Coming through. She talked about how, look, they're claiming that this is all false, but their false label is really only about, as she says here, hair splitting on Lively's recounting of specific events in the legal complaints, or worse, attempts to justify their behavior, essentially why Miss Lively asked for it. Like, think of the birth video, right? We were doing it as part of a scene, or she had never seen a live birth, and so we felt she wanted to. None of those justify your boss showing you a video of him nude, whether it's a birth video or not, and certainly not without prior consent. I think generally though, showing a video of yourself nude, even with consent, would still count for being highly inappropriate and harassing behavior. I don't know exactly the definitions, but again, as a people manager, not that I've ever had a desire But I would definitely not be showing a naked video of me at a birth of our child with a co-worker. Never. All right. That was a sigh of relief from my wife, I think. 32, plausible bias. I forget what this is, so I'm gonna have to search. Birth video and the video may be the incident that enrages me the most. It just, I don't understand why they ever felt that was appropriate at all. Going to SAG would not do much, right? They can't act on HR complaints. Correct. Okay, so this is another one that comes up a lot. She never talked to her union about it. I don't have it with me, so I'm not going to go bring it up. But if you go look at the SAG's guidelines basically are, if you're facing harassment at work, tell us, and then go take it up with your employer and go through your employer's harassment protocol. Now, one of the things that Lively called out in her original complaint was that she was never given a handbook, a HR handbook. She was never given what the procedures were for filing a HR complaint. They did not have any formal HR complaint process. So if she'd gone to SAG-AFTRA, they would have just told her, hey, take it up with your employer. And she would have said, they don't have a process. The next step is that SAG-AFTRA basically say to Wayfarer, hey, you've had these complaints. You need to do an investigation and then tell us what the results of that investigation are. So once again, it would be on Wayfarer to actually do the investigation, to do it. And then if they didn't, then maybe SAG-AFTRA would take some sort of action against them. They don't have any real legal recourse to going after them. So I'm not sure what exactly is in SAG-AFTRA's powers to do against Wayfarer other than wag their finger and issue a press statement. I don't know. So one of the things it says in SAG-AFTRA's guidelines is you can do that, or you can take it up with your own legal representatives, which is what Lively did. So technically she did go through the SAG-AFTRA process. The SAG-AFTRA process is go through your employer's process, and if they don't comply, either come to us and tell us about it or get your lawyers involved. And she opted for the get my lawyers involved. So she did go through the SAG-AFTRA process. She's not required to report it to SAG-AFTRA. Okay, so again, they kind of come back with this. There's no plausible basis on which to infer that Lively is one of the most powerful stars in the world, would fabricate harassment claims, repeatedly report those claims to her superiors, negotiate contractual protections to address her concern, file complaints with state and federal agencies, and then years later initiate this litigation to expose her to further public ridicule and comment, to have the kind of creative control she could presumably have simply obtained by being the powerful star of a film. This brings up the point that a lot of like the stuff that Lively had, and they talk about like the power over things like suggesting rewrites to the script, having control over her wardrobe, all of these things are things that a powerful actor would normally have. And especially in like this scenario where you have a smaller studio trying to kind of break out, make a bigger name for themselves, getting in a big Hollywood star who's going to be like the vehicle for their movie, it would be expected that she would have a great deal of creative control over that movie, and that they would be willing to do it because of, you know, essentially they're riding on her fame to launch their movie. So she wouldn't have needed to do any of this to get the kind of control that she had. It also points out the FAC admits that they did have misconduct, and that Lively and that the Wayfarer parties apologized for their misconduct, and that she repeatedly raised concerns during production about the exact misconduct described. Most damning of all, the FAC references a text message between Baldoni and Nathan, right? So they showed us this text message. They did not need to show us this text message where they talked about Lively and said, you know, she's the type of person who genuinely believes she's right and that all of this is unjust. So they are literally admitting that she thinks she's right in her own mind. She's not doing it out of malice. And so all of this kind of legal action that they're taking fails because they can't plead malice. She's doing it out of a genuine and real concern. As they say, they're A good faith belief on the part of the defendant in the truth of libelous publication or broadcast should not be considered actual malice. So even if it's libelous, it's in good faith. So they then argue that basically everything else falls off from her harassment allegations, and so it should also be dismissed. And then we come to what we talked about, where this extortion threat, again, they haven't shown any single threat consistent with that theory. They haven't shown any evidence of it, and instead demonstrates that Baldoni invited Lively into the creative process. The text messages that they show, Justin's constantly, one of the creepy voicemail that they released, right? I want all of you, I really just want our creative juices mingling, or whatever gross nonsense. They show Justin consistently telling her to come in and collaborate with him, and then showered her with praise and compliments afterwards. Oh, it's your script's so good. Oh, love what you've done here. Thank you so much for this. It really fails to meet the standard of like, well, she did all of this stuff maliciously and she invented all of this stuff, and that she took control forcibly from them. But one of the other problems is, again, like this trial by Twitter thing, right? Is a lot of it is that, well, she held over their head that she was going to go public with this. Now, they've never shown any of this, that, Lively made extortionate threats to go public with claims and allegations of sexual harassment, and they felt compelled to give her this because they were worried about this. And so this is her extortion. Problem with this is that, it relies on the same falsehoods as defamation, so it fails there because it's not false, and there's documented evidence for it. Again, it all stems from the sexual harassment complaints. But also, the issue is threats of litigation, and even threats of meritless litigation, have been held not to constitute acts of extortion. So even if Lively was saying, do this or I file this, lawsuit against you for sexual harassment, even if that were true, and again, they haven't shown any evidence for it, Lively's saying here, even if that were true, it would still fail because that is not recognized as an act of extortion. Nowhere in the FAC do Wayfarer parties allege that she threatened to pursue litigation against them, or that she demanded any money or property. So it fails for all of these reasons. How do people not understand she filed a CRD if they find sufficient evidence but don't resolve the complaint? The issue is the right to sue, and here we are, and they called her and they issued her an immediate right to sue, I think, if I remember rightly. Like, it came through pretty quickly. String bells is so annoying. Sorry, on my mobile. No worries. Hello God, it's me, Sarah. In my honest opinion, that voicemail is sexual harassment, making a comment about having a baby or a boob or whatever he said. Yeah, no, absolutely. It felt very much that way, that he was pushing boundaries even in that phone call. Definitely inappropriate from your boss. Messica says creative control partially to protect the actor who played the younger person of her character from being exploited. Yeah, and this is the other thing where it fails, is like she never took creative control for herself. At the moment that she had the most leverage, where she was making these allegations, her protections were all about creating a safer work environment. Not one of them was about her getting more control over the movie outside of, I want creative edit control over intimate scenes with me and the actress who plays the younger version of me. That was the only creative control that she added. And again, that was very much out of safety. We got 36, 37. Okay, so like I said, oh, I forgot about that, 36. So yes, so not only that, any idea that the Wayfarer parties were somehow induced by wrongful conduct is further contradicted by their own evidence, in which they openly admit they were not literally forced to acquiesce. Forgot about that piece. So this is, again, a piece that they showed us and gave us the information for. Again, I love this, that like there's so much of the defense here that comes from the extra information that Baldoni provided us with his timeline and his constant, 200-page filings. So this is about when Lively asks for the producer credit, and Jamie Heath gives her, hey, she did all this work, she's been instrumental, she's great, blah, blah, blah. And then internally sent a letter saying, hey, we've requested a recommendation. This was a request we felt was unreasonable and cold-hearted. We didn't want to do it. He goes on to say, without going into all the details of the events, I'm sorry if this is potato quality, that have transpired over the months, Justin and I ended up agreeing to write the letter due to feeling trapped. She continues to hold a threat over our heads, and every time we try and hold the line, she uses that threat either directly or indirectly to get us to fold. Make no mistake, I am not suggesting that we were literally forced to acquiesce. But given the high profile of the movie, the partnership with Sony, and the amount of money invested, and the need to complete the movie, we've written a letter on her behalf. So Jamie's here admitting there that, look, we didn't feel compelled or forced into it by Lively, but we've put a lot of money into this movie, and so we felt the pressure there. So they're saying that, like, even in their own filings, they're not admitting that they felt forced or extorted into doing these decisions. I'd also point out that, like, there's a number of these decisions where they don't agree with Lively. Sending Baldoni to the premiere, right? They talk about how she made this threat. They told her no. Being asked to write the public statement, they told her no. Like, at every step, they talk about how they were so fearful of what she was going to do and how she was extorting them, blah, blah, blah. And yet they did all of these things, you know, reaching out to Melissa Nathan, doing the smear campaign and going after her. None of that implies this fear of we have to do everything right, otherwise she's going to do this to her. They felt quite comfortable pushing back, telling her no, and clearly spitting in her face on top of it. All right, 38 outside of contract. Okay, so the final part, agreed, the voicemail is so unnatural and sickening. Yeah. Sugar Bell says she had enough money to make her own movie. She didn't have to steal one. Absolutely. Her and Ryan could have, you know, if they wanted to take this movie, bought the movie, taken over, bought another book, made a different movie. It could have done whatever. This idea that she needs to steal Wayfarer's movie to be the star of a movie after she did this, went straight to going doing, you know, a simple favor, the second simple favor. Like, clearly that's not the case. And not only that, then Paul Feig was talking about how she was giving input and really loved and enjoyed her input and like being all this stuff. So it's very difficult for them to prove their case here. All right, so one of the other points that she points out here is, you know, Wayfarer's whole argument is that she kind of pushed her way into taking creative control over the movie. But that in itself, again, is not a legal liability. Like, there's no legal liability, there's no legal claim, or was it the tort? I think it's the damage that's done here. I don't know the language. But there isn't anything there, right? Because she points out here, they do not plausibly allege that Lively interfered with the actor agreement that she had. Indeed, the FAC does not even claim that Wayfarer parties had an exclusive contractual right to creative control over the film to produce, edit, or market the film free from creative contributions by Lively. So they're saying here, okay, even if Lively did push her way into the edit room, into producing and directing and do all these things, doing so didn't break any contractual agreement that Wayfarer had that said that they should be expected to have exclusive right over that. And especially with them having a negative pickup deal with Sony, Sony was always going to have some degree of creative control over the movie and some sort of influence to it. They were not just going to pick up and buy whatever Wayfarer turned out. Again, point out that creative control was Baldoni openly inviting to bring her in. But they also don't allege that Lively was contractually prohibited from having any creative control or any aspect of the film. The only conduct alleged to constitute breachment of the implied contract. So they're saying, okay, not only did you not have exclusive control, Lively wasn't doing anything to break her contract by taking over some of that control at Baldoni's invitation. So where exactly is the damage? They talk here that the Wayfarer party's grievance seems to be, again, that Lively volunteered to do more work than they wanted to do, which is plainly not a breach. They failed to allege how either the Wayfarer parties were damaged or what damages they were occurred. I think there was another part on here that talked about it. That they didn't actually have any property or money taken from them, and it says that you know, they they didn't really have any damage other than like their editorial right over the film. And again, like we talked about, that's not even contractually exclusive to them in the first place. She goes through again, makes the issue with the pleading of conspiracy, saying that they haven't really shown any evidence that they had some sort of meeting of the minds to come together and commit these wrongful acts all together. They say that on information and belief only that Jones approached Lively with an appealing offer to destroy the Wayfarer parties. So this is where they're kind of alleging that Jones reached out to Lively to offer all of Abel's text messages so that they could go after and vengefully target and destroy the Wayfarer parties. But there's no evidence of any of that, and they haven't shown anything for it. And then finally, they conclude with, hey, we're going to get attorney's fees, treble damages, and punitive damages because of that California law. So with the motions to dismiss, now that they've filed, Wayfarer get a chance to respond, and then the defendants will then have a chance to plead back. Sloan has already pled out hers, I think. We've already had Wayfarer's response and Sloan's. We've had the Wayfarer response to the New York Times motion to dismiss, so we're waiting on the New York Times to come back. And then obviously with Blake Lively and Ryan Reynolds filing these this week, we need to wait for Wayfarer to respond to both of them, and then Blake Lively and Ryan to respond in return. And then that will wrap things up, and then I think then we'll start to see judgments on them. I don't know if there will be, if Lyman's going to wait for everybody to finish and plead them out before doing it, or whether he will start to pick apart Sloan and the New York Times before these two. So we'll see. All right, that was not the only thing that was filed. What are we at? We're at an hour and a half. I think we can do a little longer. We'll probably go for like another hour. What I will do as a break though is I will throw out those memberships. So give me a moment. We'll take a quick little break and we will throw out some free memberships. All right, we're going to gift 5 free memberships to the channel for now, free. All right, happy Friday, everybody. Here we go. Boom, boom, boom. Your gift has been announced in chat. There we go. All right, Marcy Jinx, Ruthie, Katie Joy, Vicky R, and Vander V. Cool. All right, well, there we go. I suspect that these free memberships go out to like all subscribers, not just the people in the chat. I might have to do a different system where like we can give them out to the people in the chat. Oh no, Maxi Jinx is here. Cool, cool, cool. Awesome. Congratulations. Awesome. All right, we will swiftly move on. Because yeah, like I said, we probably got about another hour. We got plenty left, unfortunately. All right, so like I said, the other thing that happened this week is Baldoni did not file a motion to dismiss. Instead, what happened is all of the defendants responded with their answers. So what that means, let me show you what one of them looks like. Let's go with Baldoni's. Let's go with Mr. Baldoni's responses. What that looks like is they go point by point through Blake Lively's amended complaint, the latest version. Let me bring that up. And what they'll do is they will go through point by point and... Nope, which one is it? I lost it already. There it is, Justin's answer, Lively's. So they will go through point by point and respond to each of them. So for instance, Lively brings this lawsuit because she was unlawfully retaliated against for coming forward for sexual harassment. He says no. She says Wayfarer is the owner of the film, Justin is co-chairman, blah, blah, blah. They say, sure, we accept that those things are true. Everything else is we deny, okay? So basically they do this through all 482 paragraphs in Lively's complaint. And then they add on their additional defenses, right? I'm not counting those or bringing those in, but what I have done, I'm starting to do now is I've created a spreadsheet where I'm taking all of the paragraphs from Lively's complaint. I am entering in everybody's answers to each paragraph. And then, Master Jinx, I can confirm they don't all go to bots. It is good to know. Congrats. And then what I'm doing is adding a coding to them. So instead of having to read the whole thing, there's a quick little coding. There's a key here, basically, either they fully admit to everything in the paragraph, they deny everything in the paragraph. They can also say that they don't know, they lack information, right? So Think of private conversations between Nathan and Abel. Baldoni might not be aware of whether that's truthful or not because he doesn't know about that conversation. They admit partially that some of the details are truthful, but then deny that the context and allegations are true. This happens a lot, right? Where they'll say like, "Oh, yes, we did do that, but not in the way that you're saying it, right? It wasn't in. We weren't trying to create a smear campaign by doing that." Is essentially what a lot of these are. I created a separate one for texts. I'll tell you why that's important in a minute, but basically it's referring specifically to a paragraph about a communication, and they say, yes, that communication happened. That's the text of the communication, but we deny that the context is being correctly characterized, and we deny any allegations with that. And then finally, there is legal conclusion, that this is just a legal conclusion. It doesn't need us to respond and say whether we know it to be truthful or false. Kim says, listen to what he said about that. This is not because we don't have grounds to file motions to dismiss, but because in this day of courts giving wide discretion for leave to amend, we are not interested in providing them with a chance to learn just how poorly their legal theory has been drafted in a roadmap on how to correct it. Did he say that? Did he really say that? I gotta go Google that in a minute. No way. That's amazing if he said that. Yeah. I mean, that sounds like a very Friedman thing to say to celebrate victory in the wake of defeat. But yeah, sure, we'll go with that. So anyway, so I'm putting this through and adding this coding, and then I'm doing it for everybody else. This morning, I only got started on this today. There are 8 of these to go through, so it's gonna take me a little while, at least probably the rest of the weekend. But the reason I've done this is so you can see how these start to line up. If I hide the actual textual answers, hide this column, hide this column, what happens then is you can start to see where they have discrepancies between how they're answering. Now, understand, discrepancies are totally fine. It does not mean anything suspicious. You know, where like here, where it says later that day, Abel and Nathan exchanged the following text messages, blah, blah, blah. Justin Baldoni responded and said, I don't know, right? Because he doesn't know whether that conversation happened. He doesn't want to have it. But Nathan says, yes, it does, because she's a party to that conversation. So Nathan would say, yes, that textual conversation happened, but I don't agree in how you're characterizing it. So it's not suspicious or indicative of anything when they don't agree. That said, having gone through that, there are some instances here that are interesting. So first we'll bring up 16. So I'm going to need to come over here. So what this is going to give us to be able to let us to do is come in here and go to these numbers. So number 16. 16 is where they talk about, okay, look, Lively decided to speak up and require that Sony and Wayfarer agree to the set of protections. In mid-November, the parties agreed in writing to implement a set of protections enumerated in the contract returns to protection, included Exhibit A, including 17 provisions designed to require Wayfarer to cease on-set behavior of Baldoni and Heath. The provisions were designed to remedy misconduct, blah, blah, blah. They had an all-hands meeting. Another provision brought on Todd Black. Baldoni denies this. He says no. We come to 16. Baldoni says, answering the allegations in paragraph 16 of the complaint. I'm sorry if the text is very small. I will link the spreadsheet in the comments and you can go look at this. Defendant admits that it ends with us and Blake entered into the document, but he denies that she'd made any complaints. The Wayfarer failed to investigate or address such complaints, and the protections for work protection were designed to require Wayfarer to cease any on-set behavior. So he's basically saying, yeah, we did sign that, but they're again reiterating this claim that we don't believe it was attached to any prior misconduct or that in any way we were supposed to cease any behavior or change anything or remedy any alleged misconduct, which again is interesting given that his own timeline talks about how they had multiple meetings on this. What's it? Nathan, however, says, sure, defendant admits that Wayfarer agreed to the 17 demands, including the all-hands meeting and all the rest of it. As to the remaining allegations, she denies anything. So they gave slightly different answers on that, not in telling by itself. We get more into it. And like I say, as we go on and get all the rest of the A in here, it will be interesting uh, to see where they line up and where they don't. When we come to 29, interestingly, again, they talk about, look, we retained and hired Nathan, and that, they want to be able to create a website to discuss full Reddit, social media takedowns, full social crisis media. So this is the text message that Nathan had sent them saying, hey, you can pay for the 25 grand out of the 175 grand, I think it was, options. And that all of this will be most importantly untraceable. We'll do social media mitigation and proactive fan posting to counter the negative, as well as social manipulation, which remember was in the email on August the 8th when they talked about this is what we're going to enable. So you can see the seeds of this in the original quote that Nathan was giving them. Importantly, both of them are admitting that yes, that conversation happened. The text of that conversation is correct. Nathan delivered a proposal with the text set forward. They just deny all the allegations surrounding it. So one of the things is they admit to basically all of the text messages. They say that all of the text messages are fine. I haven't got through the rest of them. Maybe somebody else says that never happened. But for the most part, all of the text message and exchanges, they're standing behind and saying, hey, these are accurate. This happened. You, when you get hyper fixated on something about me, tell you about it. Look, again, I talked about this on Threads today. I am a seasoned veteran of EVE Online. There is nothing I love more than an opportunity to fire up a spreadsheet and spend an entire day in a spreadsheet. It is my love language. One of the things that was interesting is in Lively's complaint, they on 58, she says that Baldoni was a producer. Defendant Justin Baldoni is co-founder and chairman of Wayfarer, who starred and directed and served as a producer for the film. Everybody is coming back and at least so far saying yes, but we deny that he served as a producer. So I don't know if that was just a mistake or if there's something else here that Lively's trying to push in and talk about here outside of that. Okay, one of the big things that they admit to is everything from 202 to 207. So let's go look. Oh, not page 202, 202. Dot. Okay, this is important. So this is essentially the scenario planning document that is included at the end of Lively's complaint, right? So this is the, hey, let's go after. Oh no, this is this. Yeah, this is it. I guess they didn't include it in the amended complaint. Rude. All right, one moment. I think I've got it separate here. Okay, scenario planning document. So this is basically this document, right, that says, hey, we need to protect Baldoni's reputation and Heath. We're going to do so because we think that Blake Lively are going to make her grievances public. She was made to compromise with the premiere because we forced it. So we think she's going to, go do this and make these allegations public. And so we need to get ahead of this narrative, go for it, right? This is where she talks about we need to have all of these stories about, her reputation on Gossip Girl, use the fact that Brendan Sklenar and Colleen Hoover really like Justin. Oh, that aged well. And then also talking about how her changes to the movie got people fired and, that they tried to create a creative environment on there, lean on his podcast and his, TED Talks, talk about the power imbalance between her and Justin Baldoni, talk about how, she would use their power to get Sony and whatever to do whatever she wanted. Like I said, her reputation with Gossip Girl and Simple Fader and other actors who hate her. All of this stuff, right? And then, this was the other part where I talk about, how people in her circle, like Taylor Swift, have been accused of being bullies. And this is also where, I think they also talked about going after Ryan about his feminism as well. I can't remember what that is in here somewhere. But a lot, right? They basically come back and say everything from 206 to 207, yeah, that happened. We just disagree with the context. So again, they're admitting that they did work with Nathan. She did provide that scenario document as it is in here. So we have confirmation basically that, yes, this is the documentation that Nathan did provide to them. It is accurate. They did, prepare for Lively and her team making her grievances public, get ahead of the narrative, talk about her less favorable thing, talk about the weaponization of feminism, and that Baldoni, after reviewing it, said, "I'm not sure I feel the protection on the call." Again, all the way, they admit, yes, the communications contain the text set forth in that paragraph. They just deny the remaining allegations in the pen. So, expect your art. Will you bring up Abel's lawsuit against her former employee Jones? Yes, that is going to be at the very end. We're going to get through the answers, then we're going to talk about Abel's countersuit, and that will wrap things up. So we're going to just get through. We've only got a couple more of these to do, and so, well, 10, 15 minutes, we'll get to it. Okay, but the emoji. Yeah, exactly. Exactly, but the emoji. So, I mean, they're admitting to all of this. So, all of the things like with the emoji, he wants to feel like she can be buried. We can't write, we will destroy her. What was it? We can't write this down if we put all the things he wants in a document. Imagine if it would get into the wrong hands. And then I think there was the other one where she said, like, we can't put it down, it would cause trouble for us. All of that. One of the interesting ones, though, that came back so far on this is 222. So 222, they talk about how Tag and Melissa Nathan have a relationship with Wallace, and that Nathan worked with Wallace on previous matters, and Tag retained him to work on behalf of Wayfarer and Baldoni. And I could have sworn I have seen something from Wayfarer that said this as well within like the last week or two. So I'm going to have to go through all the documents because I will never sleep another wink until I find it. But I'm fairly sure there was a document from Wayfarer somewhere that said that Wayfarer had hired Nathan and then Nathan retained Wallace. I can't find it right now. If anybody knows where it is, or you're watching this and you know it in the comments, tell me. Because they originally had said this, and they had previously given answers to her first complaint early on, because I'd never seen those documents. Somebody had shared like clips of them or screenshots of them, and in that original document they answered that yes, this was truthful. However, they have all now changed their mind. Baldoni, Tag, and Nathan have all changed their answer to this from July to now. They're saying something different. Where is it? Which one is this? 222. Now they're all saying, okay, we did erroneously state in its answer to Lively's initial complaint that Tag did retain Wallace, but now we're saying we don't know. So they're saying, yeah, we did originally, or Tag originally said, yes, it retained Wallace, but they were wrong. They were wrong about that. I don't know what the real answer is. Again, Baldoni's answered this. Nathan gave the exact same answer. In fact, it's a copy paste across all of them. And Tag themselves also give the same answer. Now, again, coming back to Jed Wallace's motion to dismiss, right, where he's very coy about talking about that he was working with Nathan, that she had contacted him, but he very deliberately avoids talking about that he was hired by her, right? I was contacted by Nathan. My observations, I made comments to Nathan. I provided feedback to Nathan. Doesn't say that he was hired by her or contracted by her. So I don't know what's going on there. But yeah. Timeline page 126. 1 second, what am I? Did I still have it open? Yeah. 126. Well, they say that he's engaged. They don't say who by. So yeah, so interesting, right? That they are changing this. Is engaged, but by who? They're not quite sure. So I don't know if this is something where they're trying to like get distance. I don't know if this is just an actual inaccuracy that Tag never paid him and maybe he's getting paid directly by Wayfarer or Heath. I don't know. So it's very interesting that they are changing their story on this. Like I said, I could have sworn Wayfarer said, like I said, I think the sentence is something like Wayfarer hired Nathan and Nathan in turn retained Wallace. And I don't know where that was. Like I said, I'm not going to sleep until I find it now. See, this is why I put everything in spreadsheets and databases so I can search it and get it, because not having the receipt, oh, it haunts me. It haunts me when I don't have the receipt. All right. So talking about the same day, 225. So interestingly, right, these are the emails where they talk about, hey, we want to, after they've said, let's do the green light for the social media combat plan, they say, hey, this is how much, right, for doing social media mitigation, proactive fan posting, and social manipulation. And then, hey, can we get Jed Wallace's team up to speed? Again, 225 and 26, Baldoni says, I don't know anything about that, nothing to do with me, right? And he's not copied on the email, so it's fair that he might not have any knowledge. Nathan, however, does say, yep, defendant admits the allegation that Tag sent those communications containing the text sent forth in that paragraph. They deny all remaining allegations. Same for 226, they say that, yep, Abel definitely sent that communication. We deny everything else. So, you know, when we talk about like, oh, remember how at the beginning of this, she's manipulated all of these emails, all of this text is taken, you know, there's been doctored. They're saying consistently, yup, yup. There's only one text message so far that I've seen, and again, I've only done Baldoni and Nathan, that they say no. Guesses in chat, which text message do you think is the one that they say, nope, don't know anything about that text message? Give you a second while I go find where we're going to. See what chat's got. Who can guess what the text message is? All right, chat. Here we go. All right. So let's just look at what's going on. So, from all of these, right? It's all of these text messages. You can see admit, 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 admit. Baldoni only admits a couple of them that he might have knowledge of. Rest of them, Baldoni has answered throughout all of this. He doesn't know. So let's make that clear for right off. This doesn't involve Baldoni. Baldoni says he doesn't know about this. But for most of these text messages, through all of this, Nathan says admit. You see how there's a couple of red ones. She reads 261, 263, and 267. Okay? So 261 that Nathan denies is this one. During the same period of time when media sources inquire about HR complaints, Nathan, Abel, and their teams work to suppress coverage of these HR complaints. She says, no, denied. That's not true. 262, however, she says, further on around August 14th, when media outlets inquired about the HR complaints, they were saying that we have been told there was at least 3 HR complaints filed against Justin Baldoni and inquired if the complaints were investigated and what the results were. Abel says 262, yep, that text message happened. We deny all the allegations. So this time, Nathan and Abel were aware of the existence of complaints and sought clarity as to the specific HR complaints. And this is the text message where they say, hey guys, read the, TMZ just reaching out to us about the 3 HR complaints. Our understanding is 2 were from Blake, 1 was from blank, read the sexy comment, is the additional one from blank, read the thing with Jamie in her apartment in New York City, just wanted to clarify. Suddenly, Nathan says, nope, deny that text message is legit. Nope, deny that allegation. Nope, didn't happen. 1 minute later, Abel asserts the need to position the claims as the claims that are already out there about the kiss and the wait, referencing the earlier reporting by TMZ on his lingering kiss with Lively and her wait on set. I think we need to position it as the claims that are already out there about the kiss and the wait comment. Oh, suddenly, Nathan says, Oh yeah, Abel sent that communication. Yeah, that's correct. Oh, we deny everything else though. So what exactly is Abel responding to here, if not this text message? So it's very interesting to me. So they're denying that they were trying to suppress HR complaints, obviously because of the legal liability. They deny that internally they talked about the HR complaints, again, because of the legal liability. But they're happy to admit that the other text messages in that conversation were live. So you can see here, 1903, 1902. So it was sent about a minute after. So what is it that Abel's talking about, or referring to, if not a response to this message? And then, like I say, the next piece is 267 that she denies. So they talk about then they were engaging with several media platforms, discussing the issue of the HR complaint. Nathan again says, "Yep, that's true, but we deny the allegations." You know, that the Daily Mail was hounding her about the HR complaints. She says, "So we have the four majors standing down on HR complaint." She says, "Yep, that's an accurate text message, but I deny the allegations." And then 267, during the same period of time, Nathan and her tag team planted or otherwise were involved in generating or influencing the content put forth on social media, including Reddit and TikTok. That one, she says, no, we didn't do that. So you wouldn't put it past them copy and pasting the wrong text on the denial. I would look through because they all refer specifically to a paragraph. So this is one of the things that like caught me up a little bit. So you can see here like 261 and then 261. So it's definitely referring to 261 and they're giving different answers. Now, I will say there are probably some copy and paste errors, if not in the answers themselves, absolutely in me when it comes to copying and pasting them into this spreadsheet. So definitely call them out. But I thought that was interesting that there's only bits of that they will share. They also, other bit that was interesting is the story that Sarah Nathan worked on page 6 that Melissa Nathan couldn't work on because she was working on something else. So she told Abel to reach out and work with her on it. And so these are the pieces about that, talking about how they were talking about Lively having a feminine edit, and it wasn't a feminine edit, it was just her old choices and all this kind of stuff. But talking about how, she'd approve every aspect, that her husband wrote one of the most important scenes in the movie, and that she was begged to remove her song choices from the film. The language contained in the article is almost a verbatim copy of the language exchanged between Sarah Nathan and Abel via text messages and reflects multiple of Abel's revisions to her film. Nathan says, I don't know anything about what my sister and Abel were working on. And then they allege that Tag publicly shared that article on social media platforms. The narrative that Lively steamroller bulldozed Mr. Baldoni in the film for her own personal gain. She says, no, we definitely didn't do that. We did not share that story on social media. So interesting that they're saying that, because again, if there's evidence, if Lively has evidence or direct message or anything, that's going to be a problem for them. But maybe they don't. Maybe she's denying it because she knows they don't have any such evidence. The other one was this one, 295. We got one more and then we will move on. But 295. Scroll. 295 was in response to the CRD complaint. Baldoni's team admitted to reveling in shaping stories about Lively. On December the 22nd, after Lively's CRD complaint was leaked to the press, Abel posted to a PR and marketing group on Meta to defend herself among her peers. Stunningly, even while attempting to deny Lively's allegations, Abel conceded the retaliatory nature and intent of the campaign, stating that Wayfarer, Baldoni, and the larger team prepared for, that is, conspired to perpetrate a smear campaign, including negative press and a social combat plan, and been further prepared to take over the top steps to protect Mr. Baldoni. What they're referring to here is Jennifer Abel decided to, when all of this came out, post to a private PR professional group her side of the story. I do not know to this day, what compelled her to put this out there. If you were going to issue a statement, do so through your lawyer to the press, have legal go over it, right? If you're named in a lawsuit, don't put out any sort of public statement that does not go through legal, period, end of day. She decided to make a Facebook post. She says, I thought the day would never come where I needed to defend myself and my own peers, but this has certainly been an interesting and devastating, quite frankly, couple of days. Here are the facts. I was never subpoenaed. I found out my private text message and emails were included in the complaint after I received it on Friday night, and the New York Times contacted me 1.5 hours after receipt. They had already reviewed the 80-page document and had questions prepared, and apparently also received thousands of pages of our documents with our correspondence that we had never seen. So it was clear that this was a coordinated effort, but nothing we haven't seen before since I've been working in talent PR for over 15 years now. Note, however, that Wayfarer thinks this is some outrageous, egregious move that they can sue for, not something that is apparently normal the PR people have seen all the time. I recently left my previous firm, at which I was still with during this campaign, talking about Jones Works, with a team who participated in the campaign and a boss who oversaw it, and who had access to my work emails and work phones, so you can deduce from that what you will. What the cherry-picked messages don't include, although not shockingly, as it doesn't fit the narrative, is there was no smear implemented. So she's saying that they planned it but not implemented it. No negative press was ever facilitated, no social combat plan, though we prepared for it, as it's our job to be ready for any scenario. So again, she's admitting that yes, they did prepare to do all of this stuff. But we didn't have to implement anything because the internet did the work for us. Sure, we talked about it, contemplated if we needed certain things, flagged accounts we needed to monitor, and worked with a social team to help us stay on top of the narrative. Again, not monitoring, right? Not a social team to monitor sentiment, a social media team to stay on top of the narrative. So we could act quickly if needed, and yes, we rejoiced and joked in the fact that our fans were recognizing our clients' heart and work without us having to do anything, but keep our heads down and focus on positive interviews for a client. It's a tech show. We sophomorically reveled and again joked privately to each other about the internet's feedback to the women whose team was making our lives incredibly difficult over the course of the campaign. Yeah, you gloated about how the internet loves to hate women. Not a great look. I'm human. Always, right? I think you should probably learn that one from Baldoni, right? That's the way to go. I make mistakes, right? This is his voicemail. I make mistakes, but he'll always come back to center. The long hours, months of preparation on top of my day-to-day scope. It felt good to see that although we were prepared, we didn't have to do anything over the top to protect our client. Incredibly difficult, you say, in what way? Funny you should ask. I was notified at the start of the campaign that the opposing team, and if you're thinking this is a long statement to put out on Facebook, you're right. You should have stopped long before. I was notified at the start of the campaign that the opposing team had been planting horrible stories about my client as a fail-safe if my client did not comply with the demands set forth from the campaign. So again, this is Nathan, where she was talking about there was the Daily Mail story and the Page 6 story, which, as we covered, looked like they were heavily planted by Nathan herself in order to motivate Wayfarer. They have not been able to show any evidence that either Lively's team or any evidence of those articles being pre-written before Nathan is joined on board. So if they knew about it and they had evidence of it, where is it? Especially given that Nathan seems to have direct communication at the Daily Mail. Her answers also talk about she does have a contact at the New York Times. She obviously had a contact at Page 6 and at TMZ who were feeding her tips. They weren't feeding her what articles they were working on. They were feeding her the tip hotline that we're getting of, hey, somebody's telling us about the story long before anything was being made. So if Nathan had that kind of access, how come they don't have where these stories were planted, who, by, and when? Anyway, I was notified at the start campaign that the opponent story put failsafe, which is why we were brought on crisis. It's not something that I do. My sole job was to put together interviews, screening opportunities, and speaking opportunities for my client in support of the film, a standard scope of work. I did my job. So she's saying my remit was very narrow, and I've talked before, I think like that's Abel's best defense, is that blinkers on, I was just passing you messages, I know nothing. Now, what kind of woman would work against another woman who was a victim of all the things being claimed? Thanks for asking. Nobody did. After reviewing the evidence, facts, hard proof that countered every single thing that was being claimed and demanded at the start of production, I made a choice to stand by my client of almost 5 years, the man she can't stand, pompous, arrogant, won't take accountability, who had dedicated his life to the equal treatment of others, especially women, who had no incidents of negative treatment of others, apart from the prior lawsuit for racial discrimination, apart from the prior lawsuit for copyright theft, apart from the fact that his prior cinematographer said he was incredibly exploitative and performative and was just using people's terminal illnesses for his own profit and gain. Anyway, apart from all that, and who had a wonderful community and team at Wayfarer who held all the same moral fortitude and lived their life accordingly. Well, If they all have the same moral fortitude, that is damning praise. As representatives, we all have to make that choice. So I did that to the best of my ability, and I felt good about our efforts. Is my client perfect? Here we go. No, in fact, he says he's not perfect. So constantly to the point that I tell him he needs to be less self-deprecating because it could all be taken the wrong way. Are Blake's feelings valid? It's not my position to say or speculate what she was feeling in those moments that she claims, and I would never slam a woman for speaking her truth. But at the end of the day, if it's not the truth and there is evidence that proves otherwise, then as a representative, I feel I have to do what is right as well. So huge public statement that she issued for no reason. So having said all of that, Lively's complaint there talks about that's what she put out there and that she'd done all of this. Baldoni straight up denies that paragraph. So I suspect that he's essentially denying that they're the team prepared for the smear campaign and the social combat plan, all the rest of it. However, Nathan says, yeah, she did make that social media post, but we deny all the remaining allegations. So they're trying to find that middle ground of like, she did say that, but the things she said aren't true, essentially. So it'll be interesting when I get to, I think I've got Jennifer Abel up next, to see what Jennifer Abel's answers on that one say, right? Yes, I said that, but I was lying. Haha, made it all up. It was jokes. Is my client perfect? No. And I said, I love this because it always reminds me of the Brennan Lee Mulligan skit, right? They did where, you know, the defendant ruins his case at a court case where, you know, Brennan's giving this huge speech about, you know, oh, you've heard our specious arguments, you know, you can't connect my client to the crime, you know, there's no evidence, you know, the prosecution are leading you down this road, but like you've got to prove he was there beyond a reasonable doubt, and they haven't given you that, right? You know, is my client a perfect man? And he jumps in and goes, no, I mean, I killed him. And I freaking love it because, I mean, it just reminds me of this, like so much of like, am I a perfect man? No, you admit to crossing boundaries and not asking for consent and ignoring when consent was denied. Like, not a good person. And then finally, the other one that was interesting was on 300, Lively's talking about Friedman going on and on and on to the press. On information and belief, the defendants approved and authorized Friedman to publish the above statements. So they're essentially trying to say that, look, this has not stopped. Friedman has continually made damaging and defamatory statements, right, outside of the court pleadings, talking about, you know, she'd made false allegations, that it's all lies, that, you know, they're trying to hurt him and do all this stuff. They're saying all this stuff as though their case has been proven and true, and that's not the case. And so Lively's saying, hey, none of that's true, right? I'm making these allegations in good faith. I'm making them based off what I truly believe, and I'm not doing it with an intent to harm. So what he's saying is defamatory, and that the defendants have all authorized and approved him to make those statements, given that he's their legal representative. No defendant has issued any retraction or expressed disapproval of their statements. So essentially, all of the defendants in this case are happy with the statements that Friedman's making. What was interesting is the way that they have all come back and said it, or at least Baldoni and Nathan so far, is we invoke attorney-client privileges to the allegations relating to communications between himself and an attorney. So they're saying, hey, we're not even going to tell you what you said, what we said, and what we approved for him to say on our behalf. That's all protected attorney-client privilege. As to the remaining allegations, they require no response because it's just a legal conclusion. Any of the allegations that are in the paragraph, they deny. And Nathan says the same thing. I'm invoking attorney-client privilege. I'm not telling you anything, but we deny everything. So I just thought that was an interesting kind of response to, you are approving everything that your legal representation is saying. Okay, so coming back up, I need to scroll. Oh my gosh. So coming back up to what Messica was saying, I hope I'm pronouncing that right, Messica. Okay, so I am starting to work on Jennifer Abel's answers. However, her answers are a little different in that she gives all the answers as well. However, at the end of her answers, she is now filing a third-party complaint against Jones' work. So, if you remember, Kim, I have one interesting link for you. How can I send it to you? You can send it, I think, in chat if you want, as long as you don't mind everybody else seeing it. If you want to send it to me directly or personally, you can send it on any of the social media platforms. DM me and send it to me. We need to watch the skit now. Yes, I'm not going to bring it up, but you need to go watch the skit. Just search like Brennan Court skit and you should find it. It's amazing. Yeah, I killed him. It's so good. It's so funny. Dropout skit. Is that what it's from? It's called Dropout. But yeah. So anyway, she's filing a complaint. So if you remember, Jones is filing a complaint against Abel and against Wayfarer for participating in the spinning club, but also because Abel was stealing, or they allege was stealing private confidential business information. So that she was actively trying to leave and start her own company to steal clients from Jones Works, such as Wayfarer, and that she also stole documents as well. There's a part in her complaint. Let me bring it up. Where they talk about like they shut her account out, and she actually brags about, oh, I've got like a bunch of email addresses. They can't keep me out, which is a wild thing to brag out. So let's see if we can find it. Talking about her putting in the story, her talking to Nathan. They were working on a smear story, planted a negative story about her to Business Insider that was like tearing down Stephanie Jones. She starts talking about like poaching people from Jones Works for Nathan. She's saying like, you know, hey, do you want to, this guy will come work for you for 200 grand. Told you he's pricey. Do you think he would do it? Trying to poach talent from her. Oh, I guess not. I don't know where it is then. We'll leave that up there because that's going to be useful in a minute. But anyway, so now Abel is suing Jones Works. Now, you come back to the Facebook message, right? She kind of alleges that, look, everything I was doing was under the control and purview of everybody else. And that's essentially what her third-party complaint is. It's been misrepresented, I think, in the news, and I'll, I guess, come to that in a minute. Oh, there we go. Where they're saying that they're suing, Baldoni's suing his ex-publicist. He's not. Abel is. And, you know, they're talking about, well, you know, this is all because of her. Because Jones provided all of these text messages to Lively that she started it, basically. It's undeniable that Stephanie Jones initiated this catastrophic sequence of events, violating the most principled basic right of privacy, as well as any remaining trust her clients had. That's how he's presenting it in the news, or in the press. That's not what this complaint is. It doesn't send you an Instagram DM. Okay, Kim, let me go while we're talking. I will try and look at the camera and be on my phone at the same time. See if I can find it. Yeah, sometimes it's like it gets hidden in stuff, requests. I don't know, and I don't want to out you as what your name is on Insta. You might need to just send me like another message. All right, so in this complaint, she's basically saying, goes through all the blah, 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 blah. She talks about, okay, she joins Jones Works, and, you know, her firm Jones Works has represented all of these clients. I don't know why she felt the name to name them off, but anyway. She also points out that Jones is married to a partner at WME, which we talked about earlier. User starts with M. I don't mean to like be horrible, but I'm like, I'm gonna need a little more than just M, unfortunately. And maybe did you send me a message about Drake? Let me say that. You sent me a message about Drake. Okay. She says that her husband's at WME, and I guess this is to kind of like go back to the Ryan Reynolds stuff about WME, but like I don't understand the connection there. Yeah, she started it, right? Like not you crossing boundaries and your lack of respect and wanting to create a safe environment. Yeah, it was it was the text messages. And this is always funny to me when you're always so angry at the person for leaking or whistleblowing, not at the people for doing the shady behavior. But anyway, yes, you did start a bit. Okay, so I will done. Okay, we're good. You're allowed to send me another message. So you can send me what you need to send me. So anyway, she talks about she's joining it. When she joined, Abel talks about when she joined Jonesworks, she was met with a parade of concern from her professional network. An array of well-respected PR professionals from across the entertainment industry reached out to Abel to caution her against working for Stephanie Jones. Jones, they warned, had a well-deserved reputation for treating people horribly. Jones had become recently embroiled in a dispute with another public relations firm for stealing its clients using deceptive and unscrupulous means. But Jones was not, Abel was not familiar with Jones or Jonesworks, so she made the jump in spite of the admonishments from her peers. And she goes on to say she wasn't looking for a job, but Jones offered her a higher salary and the opportunity to lead her own team. So that's why she left. Anyway, she talks about how she joins, and then basically she starts to bring up points from her employment agreement, saying that except to the extent caused by the employee or resulting from a breach of this agreement by the employee, the company shall indemnify and hold harmless employee from and against all liability, claims, costs, damages, and expenses arising of or in connection with any breach by the company of the terms of this agreement or warranties made within. Okay. They then say basically that during her employment at Jonesworks, she was a resident of California, but she's lived in California and she has no virtual connection to the state of New York. I think she's trying to also kind of get her venue of California. That she performed all of her obligations and that she managed Jonesworks' work for Baldoni, developed a close relationship with him. There's even a text from her she downloaded. That's what I was looking for. The one where she downloaded official documents from Jonesworks, and then she like just basically changed the logo on the on the friggin' stationery and was just like done. But yeah, they talk about like they shut down her access, and she's like, oh, I got like a dozen of emails and ways to get around this thing. So they talk about this, and she says, okay, what I don't think is in Baldoni's timeline is that Abel notified Jones of her departure on July 10th. What is in there is that she confirmed her decision to resign on the 26th and communicated her intention to start her own business and offered a 6-week transition period. She gets terminated 2 days before she's, going to walk out the door. All right. This is when she gets to have to hand over her phone and all the rest of the stuff. She's basically saying that Abel was named as a defendant in the plaintiff's pleadings solely because of and in direct consequence of Abel's discharge of her duties to Jonesworks or obedience to the direction of Jonesworks. So this isn't a case where she is going after Jones for leaking the text messages. This is one in which she's trying to say, I have no legal culpability here because everything I was doing was under my employment agreement at Jonesworks, and so therefore everything I was doing was at the direction of Jonesworks. So she's actually not going after Jonesworks to try and go after for the false like giving out the private text message or any of that. This is completely wrong the way that Friedman is playing this out in the press. What she's actually going for is that she's saying I shouldn't be held legally accountable. Stephanie Jones is responsible for anything if I did anything. I didn't do anything, but if I did, that's on her. She again includes more snippets from the California Labor Code to say that an employer shall indemnify his or her employee for all necessary expenditures or losses incurred by the employee in direct consequence of the discharge of his duties, his or her obedience to directions of the employee, even though unlawful, unless the employee at the time of obeying the directions believed them to be unlawful. So she's got to make the case that if she was doing all of this stuff, she believed it was totally lawful. Which will be interesting for her to argue. And then for purposes of this section, the term necessary expenditures or losses shall include all reasonable costs, including but not limited to attorney's fees incurred by the employee by forcing the rights. Employees outed Jennifer because she not only stealing documents, but also employees, and that got back to Stephanie. So that was what got it in the first place and got her outed. I didn't know what the trigger was, and I don't know if that was included in Jones Works' complaint. So if it was, I missed it. But yeah, so instead she's trying to say, I'm not liable for this. You can see it here. As Abel's employer, Jones Works has the exclusive responsibility for the actions or omissions that plaintiff's complaint attributes to Abel, serves as the basis for plaintiff's claims, and resulted in the alleged loss of damage by the by the plaintiff. So again, she's trying to move her legal liability over to Jones and say she's responsible for anything I did. Ignorance of the law isn't a defense of the law. I mean, it looks like it is actually in terms of California Labor Code. If a boss tells you to do something and you don't know it to be unlawful, then it looks like you are maybe covered. But where I would say like she's got problems is this isn't the extent of the code, and it's certainly not the extent of her employee agreement, because every part of her employee agreement will be null and void the moment that she breaks any of the other provisions or breaks that contract. So things like her working to plant that article in Business Insider against Stephanie Jones is probably going to be covered in that employee agreement. Her trying to poach clients is probably going to be covered in that employee agreement. Her trying to poach other employees, probably covered in that employment agreement. Where it's going to get tricky, I don't know, I'm not a lawyer. Where I think it will get tricky is the dates of that stuff, right? So how much of the smear campaign was before she started any of this, how much not? She talks about Melissa and Nathan back in May, long before they ever reach out to Nathan. She also previously worked or had contact with Nathan, and Nathan, I think, admits that in her answers. So there's probably earlier communications than July-ish, July 24th, between Abel and Nathan. So how far back does that go? This is going to be wild when they get her messages. Aren't there messages showing Jones told her not to do a thing? Yes. So I'm going to get to that, and that's where we'll wrap up coming out of that with Jones. So they're basically saying, hey, I did everything at the input and discretion of Jones. So that's where I'm going to finish this out, because we've gone long tonight, 2.5 hours. I appreciate you sticking through with this, because this is a long one. I told you we had a lot to get through. So where that comes through is Jones Works this. So I talked about this in the PR in the smear campaign episode. We talked about this. There's a point, August 14th, where after they've launched, 7 days after they've launched the social media campaign, Stephanie wants to reach out to the Daily Mail on the 7th or the 8th. Heath shuts her down and says, no, I don't want you talking to Sony. I don't want you talking to the Daily Mail. And if you do, we're going to issue a public statement saying that you're no longer representing us. I think that's in here, right? No. Maybe it's not. I think it's statement, maybe? Nope. Let's see if we can find it. Could have sworn it was in here. No, maybe not. Maybe it's Heath. I'm gonna find it. No. Oh, well. All right, then. I can't find it. But I could have sworn there was in something in here. So, Jones Works, page 22. Anyway, they shut her down, tell her she's not allowed to talk to anybody. She's not allowed to, like, go represent Wayfarer. She's not allowed to talk to someone. She's not allowed to talk to the press. She does so anyway, which is how Jones and Sloan find out that somebody from Baldoni's side had been talking to the Daily Mail and planting negative stories about Lively, and it looks like Nathan. So anyway, uh, as a result of all of that, things break down between Stephanie Jones and Wayfarer and Sony. And she ends up posting out this email saying that, hey, the page 6 article was planted by her. There was no New York Post story that she kept it at bay. Melissa's sister works at Page 6. Page 6 is the New York Post's entertainment, gossip, celebrity page. So same thing. She talks about the leak of the news article that Baldoni had hired a PR crisis. They're blaming Leslie Sloan and Blake Lively, and she's saying this wasn't planted by Leslie. This is playbook from Melissa herself. That Melissa had intentionally leaked a story that was damaging to Baldoni about him hiring her, again, to motivate him to use her services and drive a wedge between Jones Works and Nathan and Abel. Because Jones wanted to, and she says here, flood the zones with positive press and push back on the claims. There's no counter to claims in the story. And again, Baldoni's own timeline as well supports this. When he's coming in here, where are we? Here's her email from Stephanie Jones saying, flood the zone with positives. We need to make sure we promote positive narratives. So she's trying to say, like, she doesn't want the negative side of things. And she's trying to say, hey, we should do this, not do Nathan's plan. And in response, Jamie tells Abel, I don't like the idea that there's continued cannibalization from within the same side, meaning Jones Works, Stephanie, and the crisis team. I only want us to be communicating with people who are working together and not ones who are undermining others within our team. Stephanie's casting doubt, and that can have an effect like poison. Essentially, he's not happy that Stephanie's not on board with the plan and is sort of like driving a wedge between them by trying to say, no, we should just focus on the positive. So all of this from Abel, where she's saying, hey, I did all of this at the direction of Jones Works, doesn't look like it's true. But we will see. All right, let's see what chat's got. Jones told her not specifically to work with Nathan. Yes. So again, we talked about this, but like Jones had prior experience with Nathan. I don't know where it is in here. But Jones talks about she had prior experience with Nathan because they had worked on a client together previously, and she didn't like Nathan's style. And so she said, I'm never working with her with a client again. But then she was forced to for Wayfarer. In fact, when, again, in Baldoni's own timeline, when we get to July 24, they're asking for recommendations. Nathan is not one of them that Stephanie Jones throws out. Abel is the one who recommends Nathan. Abel, having previously worked with Nathan, endorses her based on their strong professional relationship. So they had a prior relationship, it was strong, and she brings her in to drive a wedge between Wayfarer and Jones Works. So, interesting to me. One of the comments mentioned something important. Abel can't seem to grasp the fact that a work phone does not belong to an employer, it belongs to the employer. Those texts were not private. Yeah, and especially anything that she did with like work email as well. It's wild to me that you would do this and not think that your conversations are being monitored. The message from Heath telling Jones not to do anything was from the Wayfarer documents. Yeah, it was, but I could have sworn there was, maybe it's in one of the Wayfarer complaints, but there's a thing of like, he says, if you do speak to them, I'm going to issue a press statement saying that you no longer represent us, and that would do terrible damage to you. Which is, wild that his whole team are whining about extortive threats, and then they made that one about, hey, we're going to cause damage to your business if you don't do what we say. People need to treat work text messages like work emails. Yeah, employers could always refer back to them when necessary. Or again, Mo, like, my whole thing is just don't do stuff. Then you don't have to worry about any of your text messages and things getting leaked. And I talked about that in the video this week, right? This whole idea of, well, would you give up, if you were subpoenaed for your last, 3 years of text messages? Like, sure, there you go. Like, good luck. Go read all of my terrible text messages. Like, go for it. Like, if you don't do anything, you can't get caught. It's very simple. Unbelievable. So much betrayal and backstabbing. Oh, I know, right? It's not just this, but the PR folks, the journalists backstabbing each other. Stephanie did not want Melissa involved in anything. Melissa and Jennifer were bragging about how much money they would earn. Yeah, I mean, it's very difficult to say Abel to say that she was doing this all at the direction of Jones when there's text messages showing that she was doing all of this behind her back, and going to cause her harm, and working to do this. So anyway, yeah, so this is a new suit that gets added. We'll see. I don't know how and this all gets connected and the rest of it, but I can't see this having any effect on Abel's legal liability. There's no way that she can get covered by this and blame Jones Works. At least in my sense. I don't know. Not a lawyer, not legal advice, right? None of this ever is. So interesting. All right, so I think that is everything this week. Like I said, what's coming up this week now is, like we say, Wayfarer's response to Ryan Reynolds, Blake Lively, the New York Times response to Wayfarer, and we'll keep on moving. Appreciate y'all for hanging out with me. It was a long one tonight, so thank you for sticking with it. It's a lot. Hopefully these will get a little shorter going on. If you have any questions, let me know in the comments. But otherwise, I hope you have a great rest of your weekend. And if you are enjoying the content, as always, like it, subscribe, please drop a comment. It helps boost it so that other people get to see it. And feel free to drop comments or on the community post page. Let me know if there's any other questions or if there's anything you want to see. And we will do this all again probably next week, because I think there's still going to be plenty of documents to keep us going. And hopefully by the end of next week, this will all be finished. We can start talking over some of the other gaps and discrepancies and differences and interesting points of some of the answers from the other defendants. All right, guys, appreciate you. Have yourselves a great rest of your evening. Thanks for tuning in, and we will see you when we do this again. Bye.